Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Obnoxious Anonymous, and welcome to the Twin Peaks Thought of the Day. Today is May 20th, 2023. My guest today is Jamie, who has never been on one of these videos, so I'm here to pick her brain about the series overall, and I know she has some questions about the film that I made, Queen of Hearts. So, Jamie, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. All right, now let's just start out with how did you discover this show? Did you watch it when it was originally on TV?
You bet I did. I was I was right there along for the beginning, and for some reason my very evangelical grandmother was absolutely fine with me watching this series. She also got really into it, so that was a big advantage for me because normally she would edit what I would
Here's the
watch.
thing. Here's the thing. Because it was presented initially as a murder mystery,
Yes.
people just kind of thought it was maybe an Agatha Christie with Agent
Yeah,
Cooper being Hicor Poirot, whatever his name is. And if she had known where the show was going to go mid-season 2, not sure if you'd ever be allowed to see it.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not would she have been on board for me seeing what happened in season 2, especially in light of my own particular history. She would not have been cool with me watching that. But initially, it was like she thought it was going to be like Murder She Wrote or something. Right. So it was totally fine with her that we watched it, and I got absolutely hooked from the first episode. I mean, the pilot's pretty legendary, right? I don't have to like sell that to people, right? And so since then it's been just I recorded every episode I could onto VHS so I could watch and rewatch and rewatch. I recruited all of my friends in high school to watch the show. I was just super duper into Twin Peaks.
It's so funny because I did the same thing, right? And I never was like that with any other show. I mean, I wasn't like that when Sledgehammer was on every Friday night. I wasn't like recording every episode and then rewatching the previous episodes like hours before the new one would air.
Right.
Or calling friends right after the episode was over and being like, "Can you believe what
Can you
just
believe
happened?"
that happened?
And like, keep in mind, because you're my age, is that everybody else in school was watching 90210.
Yeah, this was not common fare for people our age. I knew a couple teachers who were into it, particularly a shout out to my English teacher, Mr. Baust, who tolerated all of my fan theories. Because it was not something that people my age were particularly into, but I dragged them in. If I could make them listen to me, I dragged them into it.
I remember my sister watching it initially, and she said, "There's no way Leo Johnson's the killer." And I said, "Why is that?" She goes, "Well, I've read like she was a big Agatha Christie person. She said anyone who comes on that hot, that strong, never the
That's
killer."
not it. I get it because so my grandmother obviously really loved murder mysteries, that sort of thing. She's the one where I got my love of noir. So this was sort of right up her alley. She also did not think that there was any way that it was Leo who did it. It was just too obvious. He's just such an obvious tell.
Now, some people at the time compared Leo coming in like that. I know he's introduced in the pilot, but definitely in the second and third episodes when he's like putting the soap in the sock and all that stuff. A lot of people compared that to the way Dennis Hopper came in and Blue Velvet, right? And he definitely was the guilty one. But the thing is about Blue Velvet was it wasn't a murder mystery. It wasn't like somebody died who did it. It was what's going on in this woman's apartment.
What's going on right now. Right.
So, yeah, I just remember watching it and like I missed a bunch at the beginning. That's why I was so happy in the summertime they re-aired it.
They re-aired it so you could catch all of them. Yes.
Right. Because it was literally a continuing story. And if you missed one episode at that time, people just it's really interesting because when you go back and watch it now, it's I mean, after you sat through Sopranos and Breaking Bad, right? Twin Peaks isn't as complicated as it seemed at the time. It's fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
right? It's very easy to get into. But at that time in 1990, if you miss an episode, you felt like it was you couldn't catch up. And in fact, if you missed 2 or 3, I know people who never even tried to watch it again.
It would be hard to recover from 2 or 3 with this TV sensibilities at the time, because
Right.
they were completely different. And I think that Twin Peaks impacted television for the better. Certainly, television stories with a large arc that sustain themselves versus Monster of the Week or Problem of the Week style episodes. Twin Peaks really brought it to this next level of mystery and clues, and
But
yeah,
season 1 was interesting because they aired it, then they re-aired it in the summertime, and then they released the individual episodes of season 1 on VHS minus the pilot. The pilot you could not get.
you couldn't
Yes,
get.
yes, they did put out the international pilot on VHS, but that was not the pilot. That was the
Right.
international version of the pilot. And then after that, they didn't do that again. They didn't do that at all with season 2, right? They didn't put out season 2 on VHS until that big box set came out in the mid 90s.
Right.
And even then it was like that Suncoast box set was like haphazard. It was like sometimes a tape would have episodes from a previous tape on it, like, and they were in terrible condition.
I carried my personal VHSs that I
Right.
had recorded myself for quite some time until they came up with, I think, the gold box or something. The first time it came out on DVD, I was like, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, so there were 2 previous sets before the gold box, but they didn't include the pilot.
They didn't include the pilot.
The gold box was the first one that not only included the US pilot, but the international version.
National one.
And then what made it real big, of course, was it dropping on Netflix, and then everybody could catch up. And what's so funny is that, when season 2 came out and was going along, chugging along, and it was like, stop starts, right? It would like be off for a couple months and it would come back on. Those last 6 episodes, which is what my film kind of draws from a lot. At one point, they weren't even going to air those, right? And it makes me think, can you imagine what would have happened if we had never seen those 6 episodes, those last 6 episodes, until the gold box came out?
That's upsetting. That's upsetting. I know a lot of people dog season 2. I love it. It's part of Twin Peaks. And I would have been really upset if I hadn't gotten those last 6 episodes, even though that last episode just sits heavy on the brain for, a good 25 years. I wanted to see it. I would have been crazy.
But it makes you think, well, Fire Walk With Me probably would have been different. And season 3 would have been different because people wouldn't have had to marinate on those 6 episodes for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though season 3 doesn't draw entirely from those last 6 episodes, I think that obviously having Cooper split into the doppelganger is one of the main driving forces of season 3.
I mean, the whole entrance into the lodge is pretty important for just everything. And yeah, like Walk With Me, narratively, those 6 episodes are important.
Well, especially since Annie shows up in Laura's bed. I mean, without Annie being in without seeing Annie in those last 6 episodes, they wouldn't even have done that. So
yeah, it wouldn't have made much sense.
Right. So I agree, because I think season 1, in terms of story construction and the fact that it's so so short of it's a mid-season,
yeah, it's a tiny
it's
just
so
slim
tight.
episodes
And so I think overall season 1 is the best season in terms of like story construction. It's so there, you can't lose a scene. It's so perfect.
Well, and the advantage is you're talking about 8 episodes, right? So there's only 8 chances to fumble. Right. And they kept it so tight, where every scene led into something, or some mystery, or some MacGuffin, or something that would pay off later. They really did focus.
Right. And what's nice about season 1, though, it was already written and shot and made before it ever aired. So there was no like this is what they made, this is what they put out. Where season 2, they're still making episodes while they're airing, so they can start like course correcting if they need to. And so it's like season 1 is like, we made this thing and now we're airing it.
Right.
And it was during them airing season 1 the first time is when David Lynch premiered Wild at Heart at the Cannes Film Festival and then won the Palme d'Or. So at that point, is like if you were a David Lynch fan, I mean, this was heaven for you because it was like, and I remember like, yeah, I brought up the fact that kids were watching 90210. I got so much crap because I said, "Oh yeah, this movie Wild at Heart came out. It's fantastic." And people were like, "That movie's weird and bizarre." And and keep in mind that like in 1990, kids in high school still didn't know Nicolas Cage, still didn't know Laura
Right.
Dern. Jurassic Park had not happened. The Nicolas Cage, meme thing had not happened yet. So it's like, in many ways, we were just ahead of the curve.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is David Lynch ended up informing so many of my sensibilities, things that I've watched. It's hard to extract Twin Peaks from who I am because it was so impactful to me as a viewer,
Right.
and seeing what you could do with television, which at the time was not considered a really great or serious medium in which to tell a story.
There were little hints of it. You had moonlighting, you had little shows every once in a while that would like give you a hint of what it could be, and Twin Peaks just dove straight in. And I've always jokingly said that Twin Peaks was my Star Wars,
Yeah.
just because it is sort of the the hero's journey in many ways for a lot of the characters, in particular Cooper. And the fact, and one of the things that I kind of mentioned about it is like Star Wars is episode 4 now, but when you watch the pilot of Twin Peaks, it's the same thing as Star Wars to me, because it's like you're diving into a world that is already established, right? Like you don't see, like sometimes when you watch a pilot, you'll see like the actors adjust their performance in like the next couple episodes because they weren't quite sure what they were doing. Twin Peaks already feels fully formed from the first scene. Like you
Yeah.
already know all those characters come in. You don't know anything about them, and yet you know everything about them by the way those particular actors are playing those roles.
Yeah,
Right.
everything in those scenes and frames leads you to be able to make deductions about these people. Like it is a rich environment for people who like to examine every single frame for clues. Like we love to do that kind of thing and back into people's characters. This is the
I
series
mean,
for you.
Laura Palmer dying. I mean, we never meet Laura Palmer, right? And at this point, and everybody is affected by it because they knew her before the series started, before we came into the show. And so you have to establish the fact that all these people really already knew each other, even though they didn't, right?
Right.
And the actors do so well playing in this lived-in world that you completely believe all these characters. It's like they don't like give you a big reveal. It's not like, here is the introduction of Mike, and Bobby goes to meet Mike at the school. It's like, no, Mike's just chilling in the hallway, and Bobby comes up to him. We catch up. It's not hard to figure out if you're paying attention. Who's friends with who, and who's double crossing who, and who's having an affair with who, and all. I remember at the time, my mom gave me a hard time. She's like, I can't believe my son stays up late to watch a soap opera. And I felt like she was like knocking me because I was like going, Twin Peaks is not a soap opera. It is,
It is.
but at
That's
the
okay.
same
Not like a
time,
normal one.
but I felt like it was elevating the material of what a soap opera was.
Well, it was a comment, I thought, on, storytelling at the time, what stories could be, what they focused on versus what they should be focused on. It's really brilliant in the many ways in which Twin Peaks works to make me think about the way that stories are told, who they're told by, who they're told about, how they're put together, how they're structured. Um, yeah, it was a very revolutionary series for the time. It pretty much impacted everything I watched after it, because if one of the actors from Twin Peaks was in it, I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna watch it.
So you sat through the 6th season of Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
Because there were three of them in there.
There are three of them. And yeah, I mean, I've sat through some crazy things that have come across my lap just because, Twin Peaks
Now,
was on it. But I was kind of already used to fandom from being a Star Trek fan.
But let me ask you this, though, because I know you're an X-Files fan.
Mm-hmm.
I did get into the X-Files, even though I own the whole series. I still have never watched it because there's this part of me that was so angry that a supernatural FBI series starring David Duchovny was getting 9 seasons, and my little Twin Peaks was getting, a season and a half.
I understand.
And a movie. And I just felt so angry. I was like, this is X-Files does not deserve, 400 episodes.
Right.
Now, I know you're an X-Files fan, so am I, but was the X-Files worth it?
Yes. Okay. I mean, I will admit that I haven't watched the new stuff past the first couple episodes
but
because I was like, this is not for me.
But at the time, were you like, oh, cool, there's another FBI supernatural thing happening, I'm gonna check it out? Or were you kind of resistant to it at first as well?
So I didn't watch the X-Files at first. It took me a couple. They were kind of in the swing of their first season by the time that I joined it. I was in college at the time. One of the people in my dorm was like, hey, you should come watch this. And I sat down and I watched it and I'm like, that's Denise.
Kill my mocha.
Sorry. And that, they're like, what? And I'm like, from Twin Peaks? Like I've got this show up in my room.
And also, I mean, he had just come off a few movies and stuff like that. He did The Rapture, and he was in California.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I was like, oh my God, I'll give anything that crosses my radar with the Twin Peaks actor a chance. I'll sit down and watch it. And
it was worth it. It just made me upset.
I totally understand that. I was like,
why doesn't Fox pick up Twin Peaks then if they're gonna run with this? Because when Twin Peaks
the same genre family, it really stung.
And it's weird because you wouldn't think that Friday nights at 8:00 would have been a good time for that show, but Fox was like, oh, well, we'll just roll the dice. And I know, that people say like, oh, when they put Twin Peaks on Saturday nights at 10:00, it killed it. Yes, I understand it killed it for most of the adults, but for me, who didn't have a driver's license and was a kid, but that was like the perfect time for me because I didn't have school the next day. I could kind of just dive into it.
I still, that did not persuade me to stop watching.
I just want to make it clear, I own all 11 seasons and the movies of the X-Files. I will watch it one day, and I'm not opposed to it now because I've made peace with it, and also we've had a third season and the Twin Peaks, and all that. But you have to remember, in 1993 when I was livid.
It really hurt because I remember hearing how people hated Fire Walk with Me, and I loved Fire Walk with Me. And so it really bummed me out that Twin Peaks was sort of thrown over and everybody just fawned over the X-Files. But that's okay. I didn't allow it to get in my way too much. I really just wanted more supernatural FBI stuff, please.
All right. So the movie comes out. Were you looking forward to the movie coming out, or were you surprised there was a movie that came out? Like were you one of those fans that were, this movie's coming out? Were you ready for this movie coming out, or did you just?
I bought tickets to see it in New York.
Okay.
And my grandmother went with me.
I had the soundtrack 2 weeks or so before it came out.
I did too. I did too, and my grandmother went with me. Just sit with that for a second. Yeah, that sucked.
But why now? Why did your grandmother come with you? Because she wanted to see it, or just to get into it?
Well, so yeah, she was my adult. We were up in New York anyway because we were seeing Phantom of the Opera. We wanted to get another activity in, thought it would be really cool to see Fire Walk with Me since we had watched all of Twin Peaks several times over together.
So you're like, let me do 2 haunting love stories about obsession.
Yeah, with my grandmother, with my super evangelical grandmother, and there's a lot of other stuff and trauma kind of packed around it. That's kind of wild when you consider that the two of us were sitting there watching this particular movie on the screen. But I really, really liked it. The thing that I liked about it was that it was this very frank examination of this poor woman's life, and that was the kind of story that I needed to have told to me so that I could work through my own trauma, and I think that there are a lot of us who feel that way about Laura Palmer's story, where it gave us a lot of peace, where real life doesn't always give you that.
Sure.
But what was really strange was some of those scenes were not exactly what I would select to see with my grandma.
I understand. Now, in my case, I ended up seeing it twice, and it was so weird because it didn't do very well, and yet it still played in my town for over 2 months. That's just the way it was back then.
Were you from were you from a large town or from a small town?
I'm from here, Monterey, California, so it's about medium.
Yeah, I lived in Washington, D.C., and then we moved to rural Pennsylvania. So the setting of Twin Peaks also really struck a chord with me because of it being very rural and it being a small town, and it really, really spoke to that small town experience. I was just wondering, what size of a town was it still playing?
No, it's I mean, this isn't it's not a city. But
it's a good size.
It's a good size, and yet there are a lot of areas that are very Twin Peaks. We have woods here. We have
I used to live in Los Angeles for about 5 years, so yeah, I knew my way around to.
So there was enough of this area reminds me a lot of a combination of either there's the Twin Peaks area, and then this area also feels like Wilmington, North Carolina, where they shot Blue Velvet. So I kind of figured it was kind of like a middle ground. When I saw Blue Velvet, I was like, oh, that's our town. That's where I live. And
that's cool.
And it's funny because Wilmington is sort of known as the Monterey of the East Coast, because we're right there on the ocean. If you've seen Big Little Lies, that's where we are. But we also have
my family of origin is from North Carolina.
Okay, there you go. Now, for instance, with Fire Walk with Me, keep in mind, I'm coming off Blue Velvet, coming off Wild at Heart. These are huge cinematic films. And one of the things that kind of struck me about Fire Walk with Me is that, except for the fireplace and the kids snapping and the gel you see off camera, there's and the log ladies, I guess, talking about it, but there's no fire in this movie, right? And
no, there isn't fire.
And Wild at Heart is just nothing but fire.
A fire.
Right?
Fire.
Everything's about a fire, and then the matches are being struck. And I thought, did David Lynch kind of shoot his wad with the fire in Wild at Heart?
He mixed his B-roll.
And just forgot to put it. And I never had a problem with Fire Walk with Me per se. I liked everything in it. What irked me, and this is because I knew about this beforehand, because if you were a longtime fan, you knew about this. People Magazine and other mags at that time were saying the movie came in too long and David Lynch had to cut everybody out but Laura Palmer and Bobby, James, Donna, and her parents. And I was like, okay, because I had heard that everyone had come back and shot these scenes. And then I'm like, okay, we're just going to cut everybody out. Okay. So I didn't mind anything in the movie except for one thing, which was James calling Laura on the bed at the end when it's supposed to be her dad calling from Ben Horn's office.
Right.
The main thing that drove me nuts was what about all the other actors who shot scenes? Where is this footage? Because I felt because even Cheryl Lee went on Arsenio Hall and she said, this is the last week of Laura Palmer. You get to finally see what she did. I'm like, BS, you do. Because everything that they had said that happened in the first season during that last few days, right? We never saw.
Right.
We saw basically Laura hanging out in her bedroom, Laura doing drug deals with Bobby, and things like that. That was the other thing that kind of irked me, was that the fact that Bobby killed the guy, right?
What is up with that? Like, what is Bobby killed a guy?
Right.
Like,
That's fine, right? I mean, like, okay, if you want to go there, and it's never touched on again, all right. But
Bobby is a
when,
cop, never
but
touched on
when
again.
but when James tells Donna in the pilot, she said that Bobby killed a guy, right? Now I know what happened. David Lynch and Bob Ingalls rewatched the pilot and said, "Ooh, that's something we can do. We can do a whole scene around that."
Right.
Whereas I was under the impression, on my many, many rewatches of Twin Peaks, that James misunderstood Laura and thought that her referring to Bob was Bobby.
That could be it.
Well, that's what I always
Yeah.
assumed, because they never hinted that Bobby killed anybody in the original series. They mentioned they dropped that in the pilot, right? And then they never go back to it again, right? So I was like, I thought, well, I can understand it, because James is talking about Bob later in the series, where he says, you want to play with fire, little boy? You want to play with Bob? Right? When he tells that to, I believe, the sheriff. So I just always assumed that she was talking about Bob to James, and he just assumed it was Bobby. But anyway, they fashioned this whole scene about that. And I don't know. I really liked what I saw, but I kept thinking, there's a lot missing. I feel like there's just a ton missing. So there was no internet at that time, but I found out that you could order the script, right? So I ordered a copy of the script, got the script, which is now available online, and I read it, and I was like, wow. Now, I could see why they cut a lot of it out, and some of it they didn't even shoot, and sometimes they shot like that whole scene, that missing piece scene of Big Ed and Norma in the car, not even in the script. So it's like they didn't shoot some stuff, and then they shot stuff that wasn't in the script. But I was like, there was so much in there that I was like, I wish that had been in there. And then I kept thinking of like other things, right? Like, I wish we really could have seen that moment of Laura and Josie on the day she died, of like, because they're supposed to have that weird interaction with each other.
Right.
And I was like,
Right.
that's so cinematic. It would be so amazing to have Cheryl Lee just look into Joan Chen's eyes and just tell her she's a fraud, and she know, she can see the, that this Josie Packer persona is a
Just
fake.
a joke. Right.
Right. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, this is what I want to see. This is the kind of stuff I want to see. So again, like I have no problem with the stuff in Fire Walk with Me. It's just like, I know it's like there's so much possibilities of what could have been. And the fact is that, like, Lynch didn't have a series. He didn't have many episodes to do this. He had to do it in 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Right.
So there's only so much you could,
right.
put in there.
Yeah, there's only so much that can actually make it into.
But for a long time, I kept saying, I can't wait to see these missing pieces. And so when the internet finally kicked up, and there were all these like petitions, let's get the missing pieces out. Well, it was called the deleted scenes at the time, and then the first New Line Cinema DVD for Fire Walk with Me came out, and there was no deleted scenes.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, oh my goodness. And
like, why are you doing this?
Even Jennifer Lynch had told me, she's like, I remember seeing the rough cut of Fire Walk with Me, and she said, I'm telling you, they were great, but I understood why my dad cut them. And I was like, okay. Now, I've seen them. Obviously, we've all seen the missing pieces now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we've seen what they've released to us. I'm fairly certain there's a little bit more. Hold that thought though. Yeah. And I maintain to this day that if David Lynch wasn't in such a hurry to make it to the Cannes Film Festival, I think the movie would have been cut a bit differently. I think that if the Cannes Film Festival had been another 6-8 months away, I think some of the scenes in Fire Walk with Me that we have now would have been out, and I think some of the missing pieces would have been put back in. But they had to get to a certain date, and I know that David Lynch stands back and says like he's really proud of the film and all that. I've also heard that he would love to recut a new version of the movie too. So
yeah, it's got to be challenging. And you've taken on that challenge, right? To try and recut everything about Fire
Well,
Walk with
so
Me.
there's so many fan cuts out there, which I love.
Right.
And the big one, of course, is the MK, not MK, the
I have
Q2,
that one.
the Q2 one.
Yeah, I have that one.
And it's fantastic because it's basically everything in the kitchen sink
Everything. It just.
except for the Cooper talking to Diane scene, which is I'm thankful for out of the film. The fan edit that I'm kind of just playing with, I'm just doing it for my own entertainment, it's just sort of an editorial exercise, which is, okay, put the missing pieces scenes that I feel like are important into the film, but I gotta maintain the 2 hour and 15-minute runtime. So that means I have to take stuff out. So I'm just finessing it and playing with it and moving stuff around and seeing, like, can I put the scenes that I feel like need to be in the film?
Sure.
But at the same time, though, I'm adhering to the theatrical runtime contract that David Lynch signed.
The 2 hours, 15 minutes. That's got to be an interesting challenge, right?
Whereas, because like most fan cuts, they don't care about time, right? Like I said,
a fan is going to watch
everything. And if you watch the full 3.5 hour fan cut of Fire Walk with Me, it's amazing.
It is.
It's
really
really great.
Is.
And in fact, after you see it, you'll probably never watch the theatrical cut again.
Yeah, why? When there's a more complete.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and for years I kept being told that, like, well, the other characters took away from Laura's story, right? Whereas when I watched the whole fan cut, I go, actually, no. What it does is it balances the film out, so it's not hardcore Laura's scene after hardcore Laura's scene after it's like you get to be a little bit over here for a minute, and then you come back, so that it's just not. It kind of feels like Fire Walk with Me in many ways. It kind of feels like Oliver Stone's The Doors, where it's just kind of like it's just Jim Morrison scene after Jim. You know what I mean? It's like, how many scenes of him drinking and doing drugs can you take in a 2 hour and 20-minute movie? Like, occasionally, I want to go hang out with Ray Manzarek, in comic.
Right. Oh, no doubt, no doubt. You want to like spend some time. One of the things that makes Laura's story so interesting from season 1 is seeing it from everybody's point of view but hers. I understand that reversing it is interesting, but a lot of people who are watching Twin Peaks, it's called Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. So,
Whereas
they're going for all of the characters because all of them are really, really interesting, fully realized beings.
I also think that if they just made, they weren't thinking about this kind of stuff at the time, but like, for instance, like if they had put in that Annie Hospital scene as a post-credit sequence, there, that would have made people's excitement go through the roof even more.
When did those become in vogue? Because I remember
Marvel.
a time. Yeah, that's what
I mean, there had always been movies that did that.
Every once in a while, you'd get a movie.
Marvel was
Amadeus with his laugh,
Right, but Marvel was the one where people knew to stay to the end credits because there'd be a tease in there. But again, and Fire Walk with Me was, a film I went back to again and again. I was always amazed at it because Lynch, when he shoots these for the theater, fairly cinematic. Fire Walk with Me, I mean, maybe some people disagree with me. I don't think it's a very cinematic movie. It's
much more intimate.
That's what I'm saying. Like, all of David Lynch's work is filmed in 2:35:1 scope, and Fire Walk with Me, well, I guess maybe not Mulholland Drive as well, but that was shot for TV as well.
Right.
But Fire Walk with Me is 1:8:5, which is why it always felt comfortable on your TV screen, because it's, it's kind of, he didn't want to shoot it in scope because then it would be so different from the series. Right.
Because the series, I mean, there is something special about watching it on a TV.
Right.
Like versus a laptop or
I mean, the opening, credits of the movie is a TV screen.
And it's just, there's just something really special about that particular experience as it ties in to the whole Twin Peaks.
I mean,
thing.
I know people
have does feel very intimate though. It's all so close. You don't get a lot of big there's not a lot of space between you and the story like a lot of times Lynch will do.
Like, if you see Wild at Heart at home, the movie works. But I would say that you haven't really seen Wild at Heart until you see it in a movie theater with the sound cranked up. Because you will not believe how cinematic that film truly is on a huge movie screen.
I always remind people Lynch is a sound guy.
Right.
Lynch does
But Fire
amazing things
Walk
with
with
sound,
Me, even though people, they're now doing these sort of screenings around the US of Fire
which
Walk
is
with Me.
awesome.
Is
Which
yeah.
is awesome.
I'm kind of
I'm all for art house cinematic events. I'm just going to say that
yes,
because, like, I'm into the independent cinema thing. So,
but at the same time though, is Fire Walk with Me like a Rocky Horror film that you tour around? You know what I mean? Like,
but I'm hoping that to keep some of these art house cinemas alive, that we'll see more cinematic and touring events where people go and have prints of the film and show it on a big screen so that fans can come and meet and have Q&As and stuff. It just is going to do well for everybody if that
I
happens.
just know
That's
that
why I encourage that
well,
stuff.
well, no, I'm all for it too. I just, but people go there just to mock James. They like go there to laugh at
That's
James.
the memification of Twin Peaks. I get it, and I'm happy that anybody's enjoying the thing that I love. You know what I mean? But come on, don't. James has always been cool.
But what I'm saying is, like, if you see Fire Walk with Me at home, right? Fire Walk with Me in the theater is just sort of a kind of a bigger version of seeing
Big,
it.
yeah,
But it's not like seeing the straight story at home is very different than seeing it in the theater,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Seeing Mulholland Drive at home is very different than seeing it in the theater. Fire
Hmm.
Walk with Me in the theater is Fire Walk with Me in the theater. Do you
In
know what
the
I mean?
theater. No, I
Like,
totally
that's
agree. I
that's
totally
all I'm
agree.
saying. Like, it's just saying a lot of Lynch's films are different at home than they are in the movie theater. Whereas
Not this one.
I don't think it is because of the intimacy aspect of it.
Everything is so close and so intimate and so personal that I think it's able to transcend and work well in either medium. And I think that, somebody as sly and clever as Lynch knows that and made sure to scale it that way so that if people wanted to watch that work back to back, that they could.
Right. Exactly. All
And
right.
because
So
and I think that was, a way of him appreciating his audience. And it's certainly not a lot of people think that Lynch appreciates his audience all the time.
I think he truly does.
I think he does.
Yeah.
But and I think that Twin Peaks is as special to him as it is to the fans, if not more so. And that when he was looking at presenting Twin Peaks as a story in the television medium, he tried to stay as true to that as possible, even when he was making a motion picture about it. He just wanted to continue to tell that story. And as a fan, who can't love that,
And I don't know how you tell Laura Palmer's story in a scope format. I mean, you couldn't get. I mean, her close-ups would not have had the same power without it being. Now I would almost argue shoot the whole thing in IMAX.
Just go for it. Go big. Go big.
No, I mean, because instead of going long, you're just going big and just
Right.
let's go big or go home. The Black Lodge and IMAX. Let's do it.
The Black Lodge in IMAX is intriguing.
I mean, if you did like a 4D theatrical version of the Black Lodge, where just like you would just feel like when the curtains rustled, you would feel the wind and stuff.
Yeah, that would be intense.
Yeah,
that would be intense. Yeah, that and larger than life.
All right, so let's jump ahead. So you find out that season 3 is being made. How did you? Were you counting down the days when it was coming out like the rest of us? Yeah.
Yes, and didn't it come out on the 21st?
Yeah,
May 21st.
Right.
And May 20th is my death date. So I was like, oh my God, he even picked a kind of close to important date for me. So I can't wait to see this. I was definitely got showtime so that I could see the first 4 episodes when they dropped all at once. Yeah, I was on board. I was also I did watch your channel some leading up to it. And I don't normally participate in internet forums very heavily, which is funny if you know me on Twitter. That's where I go when I'm not writing, and I should be writing all the time. But yeah, I was following fan theories and reading some stuff because I thought it was really great to see a community of people come out and say, yeah, I can't wait to see this thing that I loved for so long, and thought that I was just the only one.
Well, that was the thing about being a Twin Peaks fan. It's like, I know you say you got all your friends on board, but for the most part, it was kind of a solitary experience.
It very much was, especially those 25 years.
Yes. Because I remember meeting a friend, like it must have been 2000, 2001, and she said, "Is that Twin Peaks on your shelf?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, Oh my god, I used to watch that. Like it was like meeting an alien or something like that. You know, that someone else had even heard of this show.
I remember one time in college that everybody had brought in some CDs for this thing we were doing, and somebody saw my Fire Walk with Me CD and was like, "Who's this? I'm going to talk to you now." And I'm like, it's mine.
All right,
But
so
yeah, totally loved it. Was really, really enthusiastic to hear that Lynch was going to reboot it. I was interested in what he was going to do, especially after, some time had passed. I was older, had, looked at a lot more of his work that I didn't have exposure to when I was 18. And
it also had been 10 years since Inland Empire.
yeah,
So, he definitely wanted to show he was the GOAT. And those first 4 episodes, even though I'm incredibly happy with, season 3 as a whole, those first 4 episodes, he's like that in 1,000. Just,
yeah.
Hit
Well, he
after
really
hit.
knew his audience. He was masterful at the pacing and just knew exactly how to drip, drip, drip on that tension bar. It was so great. I also I had kind of thought after the first 4 episodes, I'm like, I'm betting we're not going to see Cooper for a while, and I was fine with that because I actually thought that Dougie was a pretty interesting character. Like the other characters that we got, I was pretty cool with, and I had a sort of gut feeling that I understood what was going on just because I know kind of Lynch's language.
And also the whole meditative nature of the whole show anyway, right? Like,
Yes, very meditative. If you know a lot about transcendental meditation or his work with transcendental meditation or any of that, is very tied into those sets of beliefs. I think that comes in a lot. Very meditative, very amazingly quiet in some places for as loud as it gets in others. I really loved what he did with those first 4, but it in no way prepared me for what he did with 8.
what did you yeah, okay, let's start there. What did you think of that episode?
So I had found a person who was watching Twin Peaks who had seen Twin Peaks before, like at my job, and I just remember watching 8, sitting there and just like in shock because it was so cool, and just thinking, I can't wait
An
to
origin
hear what
tale.
other people think of this, because this is huge. This is the origin tale. This is where it all starts. This is the, you're finding out all of the answers. It's all in this surrealist weird dream he's put on, and like, I can't believe this is on television was my like, I can't believe he managed to get this on TV because it's such a surrealist episode. And
Well, I mean, it's not really television. It's cable. They had already made it. It wasn't like they had to get it cleared. It was like, they gave the script. But the thing is, though, is that the guys running the Showtime.
it's certainly not like getting Maddie's death on network TV,
Right.
which was wow, dude. Wow.
I mean, I still think that Maddie's death is more shocking and visceral than almost even anything in Fire Walk with Me, which is rated R.
Maddie's death is brutal. It's just brutal.
Or
It's
even
absolutely
Ronette's memory
far more brutal than that.
of Laura dying.
I think it's far more brutal than that. Even though, there's some really visceral images that come with Ronette's memories, Maddie's death is horrifying. I've heard people react with like, what did I just watch? Because it just feels so shocking. You feel like you've actually seen someone get brutally beat to death in front of you.
Pretty much. And that ending of episode 14 with Maddie's death is, I put that almost on par with what episode 8 of season 3 was doing. It's Lynch at such a high caliber, working on all cylinders.
It's actually my favorite episode, even 8 notwithstanding all of season 3, even though I loved it. It's my favorite episode of Twin Peaks because it just
But
Wow, it really shows what can happen when you've built a world, populated that world with meaningful characters, paid attention to set and setting, bring everything together to, and then you bring it all to a moment, and then this is what that moment can be. It was, yeah, that was a life altering episode of television for me in
well,
many
especially
ways.
since they had kind of built it up, right? They kept
Oh
saying
yeah, all the
this,
advertisement. You're going to find out.
yeah, this Saturday, November
They
10th.
didn't tell you how. If you had known how, maybe you wouldn't have been so hungry for it. Clever, David. Clever.
I just, I'm almost, I sometimes I wonder, uh, like, okay, so they kind of solve Laura's mystery. What was the rush of getting Ray Wise off the show?
I
Like,
don't know.
couldn't they
He's
have
so
dragged?
great.
But couldn't they have dragged it out where because Leland had been,
He could have murdered a couple more people.
well, not just that, but I'm saying like, but he spent so much of the show concealing who he was that surely they could have kept that going another 8-10 episodes, right?
And of all of the actors that I've loved the most to watch from Twin Peaks, Ray Wise always gets my eye because he
And he
carries
and he
those
is
episodes so
he is
well.
so nice. Like I've met him a few times at different conventions. Never had a bad experience with the man,
He
and
just
he
seems so wholesome and genuine and just kind. And then you see some of his roles, you're like, how do you do it, man?
well, it's funny because like we all know him from like RoboCop and Twin Peaks and all,
Hmm.
and like my wife didn't know who he was until she watched Fresh Off the Boat, and
Ah,
he's absolutely hilarious in that show if you've ever seen it.
I have not yet.
So he plays sort of kind of the next door neighbor kind of, but he's absolutely hilarious on that show. Um,
Yeah, he just seems like an absolute delightful person. I
oh yeah,
always
oh yeah.
love tuning in and seeing what he's done. He was
Well,
great in his season of Fargo.
yeah, like he was gonna take a picture with my son, and he just picked him up and just was like, let's do this, let's do this right, and
Aw.
and I talked to him 2003. I met him at a convention. He was promoting Jeepers Creepers 2. He was on that.
I
And
know. I watched that.
I know that's one of the reasons why I watched it. And I remember I had him sign the I had a David Lynch kind of picture book, and in that picture book was the first time we saw the infamous Palmer family photo of all three of
Oh
them
yeah,
together.
that's
And
great.
I had him sign it, and he looked at me and he said, "You know Twin Peaks?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I haven't heard anybody talk to me about this in years." And this is 2003. So of course now everyone's tweeting at him and all this stuff, right? But like in 2003, the town of Snoqualmie and North Bend, you know, they were pretending like Twin Peaks never happened. Nobody was talking to the actors about Twin Peaks. It was gone. It was done. It was sort of like a one season show that was over and done with, and no one cared about it anymore. And it's just amazing to me, like if you are a longtime fan like you and I, and we've seen Twin Peaks literally killed and brought back and then murdered again at the box office and then completely forgotten about
Somehow,
for 20 years.
somehow it came back
And well,
after
because
25
the
years.
Gold Box and then Netflix, that's what did it. If it wasn't for that, there wouldn't have been this renewed interest to get it back on the air.
Oh
So,
gosh, and I'm just realizing I'm so primed to like this resurrected media because of Doctor Who. Doctor Who went through a similar thing where it was like on, then nobody knew about it. And then they
right.
resurrected it, and a lot of people got to discover the old Who stories that I grew up with and are now, getting into this fandom. And, you see a lot of the old companions and stuff that are getting tweeted at and getting a lot of love. It's really great.
Tom Baker,
Yeah, I love Tom Baker. He was my doctor. Somewhere I have a Tom Baker scarf that sometimes Debbie back there wears. I knitted that to quit smoking. Yeah. So yeah, I was really happy when season 3 came on because I thought, oh well, a bunch of Twin Peaks fans are going to come out of the woodwork. So basically, it was my friend at work, and then my stepdaughter who also watched Twin Peaks, and so we would text You know, it was like back when the old show was on and we'd all talk
Right.
after the episode came on, you know, call each other. We were texting each other or emailing each other and saying, oh my God, did you see it? What did you think? The first 4 episodes were just such, it was so exciting. And then to, you know, have that whole thing unfold and then watch the masterful tale unfold and have this whole entire comment on nostalgia. It was great.
Like even the parts of season 3 that, you know, in different, it's funny because it's been like, you know, several years since it's been on, and like there's things where I didn't quite like at first. Now I like those more. Then there's other things that I kind of like. Now I like those a little bit less. It keeps moving and shifting. It's almost like the the times in the show, in terms of like, you know, it's shifting dimensions literally in my head. Like sometimes I like this, sometimes I don't like this, sometimes, you know what I mean? I go back and forth about it. So it almost feels like Hawk's map. It's a living, breathing thing that just keeps moving and evolving. I didn't do the calling the friend and talking about it during season 3. What I did was I went live on YouTube
Right.
and said, instead of talking to 1 or 2 people, I was talking to 500, and it was amazing and awesome. And it was like, as much as I, you know, love season 3, I loved that more because it brought it back. And for an entire summer, it was like, it was truly magical because I was in contact with so many people and we all loved the same thing. And we were all trying to figure out this and that. And, you know, for the most part, we were completely wrong about stuff, but it didn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's fun to say what's going to happen
Because
next.
we weren't like saying this is what it is. It was just kind of like, I'm thinking this is the direction they're going in. Of course it was,
Yeah.
but it
And it
just
never
felt like,
was.
never was. And it felt like, again, like they weren't course correcting while we were watching it. They had already made this thing.
It was in the can. It was done.
It was done. And yet it almost felt like Frost and Lynch had anticipated how people would think about it and were moving it as we were going. And it was like how did they foretell that we would think about this in this particular way at this point to shift gears over here? It felt like they were sort of like you know, fortune tellers or something.
Yeah, they were certainly really good at keeping the audience manipulated to exactly where they wanted them to be and to be seeing the pieces of the story revealed to them in the order they wanted revealed. And I'm saying that very carefully because there are some people who take that as a trick, but that's just storytelling, man. That's how you do it. And I know that a lot of people saw season 3 hoping that they were going to get the easy answers. My sweet summer children.
But listen, I'll push back a little bit. I think we do get answers in it.
I do too. I just know that a lot of people felt that they didn't get the answers they wanted.
Sure.
Now, I think they're there.
That being said, I do think that a lot of the answers you're looking for are there. Like episode 8, for instance, right, is an origin tale. And yes, it's surrealistically done and told, but it's there. Like it's like, right. There's so many things in season 3 where it's kind of like, yeah, if you just look a little deeper, it's there. And it may be something that's personal. It may only you may think about it in that particular way. But I think for the most part, it's I mean, obviously it's more abstract than seasons 1 and 2,
far more abstract,
and even Fire Walk with Me. But I think that's where the whole transcendental meditation aspect kind of comes into it. That being said, I do think that there are answers in season 3. I think it, though some of those answers may have to come out of you personally.
Yes, and so I know some people were hoping for the return to be just a continuation of season 2, that it would have that same quirkiness, the same sort of style, the same storytelling. I don't want to say storytelling beats for Twin Peaks. That feels wrong. But sure, I'll go with it. Storytelling beats that same kind of rhythm that they got from Twin Peaks because it's a big comfort watch for a lot of people. Those people, I know quite a few of them didn't find what they were looking for in season 3, and I think that that's okay too.
Well, season 1 and 2
Sucks.
for all the dark things happening in season 1 and 2, it is sort of like comfort food, right?
It is.
The music,
The music, the imagery is really comforting.
right. It's very
Color palette's
nostalgic.
washed.
It's elegiac and nostalgic at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. Season 3 is much more of a challenging work.
Well, it's
also much more raw than the 2 seasons and the movie are.
For sure.
It's very much a you are there kind of feel because the way some of the scenes just go on and on and on. And I don't mean it in a boring way, but like there is a deliberate attempt to see how far they can stretch some of this stuff to a
Well, and
breaking
he's a
point.
slow cinema guy, and not everybody are slow cinema fans. And I certainly have sympathy for people who aren't. I'm willing to go on board for a long trip if it takes me to a cool place. So I was far more, I guess, primed. And maybe it's because, I practice meditation and have engaged with a lot of Lynch's work on meditation. And I was really seeing transcendental meditation as an impact on his storytelling and the stories that he was telling. So maybe that primed me to have a different experience with season 3 than other people do. I just want to kind of honor that people felt that there was a big disconnect in the timbre and the mood of the two works.
Well, here's what's really cool about
And
season 3.
I would say to them, it was disconnected at Fire Walk with Me, baby, because that
but season
started
3
to take it off.
in season 3, in my opinion, helps Fire Walk with Me
shine much more. Like it sits so much more comfortably between season, with it sitting between these two masterworks in television of about the same length and weight, right? You have Fire Walk with Me in between the two that bridges that feeling.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I honor that. But
when Fire Walk with Me was just the epilogue to the series,
yes, epilogue prologue.
like I liked it, and I loved it, in many aspects. But like when they started throwing in the stuff with the owl cave ring and stuff of that nature, Philip Jeffries and all that, I was like going, why are we doing this? We're doing, we got 2 hours left. You're doing this thing.
My grandmother was like, "Where's Cooper?"
Well, again, it's like, I was intrigued by it, but at the same time though, like, when you step back and look at it, like, oh man, they're introducing this Al cave ring and the Philip Jeffries. It seemed like too much being thrown in when like all people wanted to see were like the old characters, right?
Right.
And now when you watch season 3 and now you have the missing pieces,
and you're like,
guess what? It smooths it all out. Now I don't see how people could be angry at Fire Walk with Me anymore, because now you've got the missing pieces and now you have season 3 to put all that stuff in context.
So you reminded me of my friend at work who had seen Twin Peaks before, was a fan, really liked Lynch's work, did not realize that Fire Walk with Me existed.
Okay.
Went to download it. Downloaded the missing pieces.
Beautiful.
Did not see Fire Walk with Me, thought they had seen Fire Walk with Me. Right. And so I'm trying to talk with them about Fire Walk with Me and the missing pieces. And I start realizing this person actually hasn't seen Fire Walk with Me. And I'm like, oh, Barry, you got to go back and actually buy it and watch the actual movie. Watch the theatrical cut. You've seen just the stuff that didn't make it in. This is weird.
Well, I'm really hoping that Criterion does put out a 4K box set of the entire series of all 3 seasons and the movie.
And the movie. It deserves
and I'm hoping maybe now, because it's been rumored that Lynch has been wanting to recut a new version of Fire Walk with Me,
which I would also love to see.
But let's do it. If we're gonna go 4K with the box set, let's have Lynch drop the whole thing.
Absolutely. And
I mean, that's the only way they're gonna get me to rebuy the entire series again.
Yeah, I'm very reluctant to But
But if they just say, we got 3 hours of missing pieces from season 3, I'm gonna be like, oh god, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna sell my kidney. Let's do this.
I can get a good amount
Do
for
you
it, right?
know what 3 seasons and a movie and missing pieces and alternate cuts on 4K would cost on a Criterion? Like,
Uh,
I mean, even on a sale, it's gonna be $300.
I thought you were going to ask me how much a kidney could get on the open market.
Just get the ice ready. Here it comes.
Here we go. Yeah, it's definitely going to be pricey,
I'll
but
be dying on the couch going, just give me one more Laura scene.
I just want to see something about Laura. I don't know yet. Yeah, she's
No, because
captivating. And I
now,
love Laura, by the way, because as many trauma survivors feel a special bond to her, as a living Laura. What an extraordinary character.
when they shot the ending of season 3, I don't know whether it was. I mean, I saw them do it, but I don't know if it was shot for the show. After the scream, her and Cooper get back into the car, and drive away. Now I don't know if they were repositioning themselves to shoot that sequence again, or whether
Right?
it was to hint that they were leaving as Twin Peaks and going to some other destination. I don't know, but that's the kind of stuff that I want to see. I want to see all the little bits and pieces.
Yeah, I'd love to see the side stories in some of these works,
Yeah,
love.
I mean
And that's what
yeah,
I loved about the original work, is that it allowed itself to kind of meander and meet people, and whether they were
right.
important or not, if they added to the mood, if they added to the ambiance,
Well,
bring
that's
them
why
in.
I can't get mad at things like James and Evelyn anymore. Or not that I
I
was, not that
It's
I was at the
not
time.
all that bad. It's like a noir film. I've
I
seen
mean,
the noir film.
I wasn't honestly, I was never mad about it. I think there was parts of me at times when it was originally airing going, why are we here? What are we doing here?
I
Okay.
had seen so many noir films that I was
Right.
like, this reminds me of something. I
And of
can't
course,
recall the
and of course,
title, but it's a direct riff off of this.
right. And of course, parts of it did play into Lost Highway years later. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that, like, because Twin Peaks is so finite, when I go back to rewatch it, I can't get mad at
I
anything
understand.
that people get mad about, because I go, yeah, but you don't understand. There's only so many minutes of Twin Peaks, and this is part of Twin Peaks. I love it.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
I am not one of those people that I can't separate it. I love all of it. All of it was meaningful to me at some point because I trauma bonded hard to this series, and it came along in a time in my life where I needed something like it. And then somehow the return did the same thing, where it came along just in time when I needed a story like that to reset me mentally and to put me on the right path as a person.
All
So
right.
these are personally significant to me.
So because a lot of the people, a lot of the original fans of the show, because a lot of us, and I've interviewed a lot of people that have watched it at the time, most of us were between the ages of 12 and 15 when we first saw it,
Yeah.
which is why Twin Peaks hits us the way it does, because
So hard.
it's this huge epic murder mysteries, supernatural, coming of age, everything. Season 3 hits us hard because it's about being in middle age.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it was like made for Gen X. Yeah.
Right.
Or at least
So,
I feel so, because I'm so solidly Gen X, and I
I
really
mean,
felt that Twin Peaks struck me at these two ages where I needed it.
and I love new fans, right? Like, if you just watch seasons 1, 2 and the movie, and season 3, fantastic. But for a lot of us, that time gap in between the movie and season 3 helped make season 3 even more impactful, because it was part of what it was about, that time gap.
It was like manna from heaven, right? Like, you got the old feelings again when you turned it on. Just it was so great. It was so exciting to have
Nothing
the
else
gum I liked
mattered.
come back in style.
Nothing else mattered when it aired. The only thing that upset me about it was that, because they synced it up so that we all watched it at the same time, it was still daylight here when it aired, and so it was like hard for me to see some of the action on screen, because probably one of the streaming things, but also, but also because the sun was
Light.
coming through, and I couldn't see, when the woodsmen were like, playing with the doppelganger after he was shot. I couldn't even see what was going on. I was like freaked out. I was like, what is happening? And of course, you watch it on the Blu-rays, it looks fantastic. But sometimes sometimes streaming, like when Game of Thrones played that whole Night King thing, I couldn't even see what was happening half the time.
Yeah, the battle for Winterfell was a rough one.
But on 4K, you can see everything perfectly. So it's interesting. So season 3
I was on the East Coast when it came on, and actually was part of the inspiration to me moving to the West Coast.
There you go. So season 3 ends. Were you thinking at the time, like a lot of us were, wow, that's a great setup for the next season?
I did. But I also felt okay that if they didn't do another season, like if that was it, I felt pretty satisfied, like again, with where they had left it. So I had come to peace with everything that had happened. It's a real bummer to have your hero Cooper trapped forever in the torture hell place. But I did it for 25 years. I did it. I thought that Laura actually got a really nice arc ender with the angel. I'm like, that's great. Totally cool. I'm okay with where it ended. So I was perfectly primed at the end of season 3 to say, yeah, I totally see that as the end. That feels like, of course, that's where it would go, and that it would be in this meta time loop. Yeah, okay. I'm okay with where they ended it. But I did think, wow, it feels like they want to do another story about like around it again. So I was fully expecting that I would hear an announcement of season 4 pretty quickly after.
I think a lot of us were, because the last episode felt like the pilot of another season.
And it seems so successful. I mean, because I was seeing, people engage online about it, and,
Right.
everybody was, seemed to be talking about it again. And it was a really thoughtful work, and critics seemed to really get where it was going. And everybody said, yeah, this is a great comment on nostalgia and reboots and all that stuff. I really thought that, if it was going to have momentum to go, it would have gone.
Right.
I really thought it was going to.
It all comes down to Lynch and Frost, whether or not they want to do it or not. So.
And they get to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They get to do that. And I totally understand that. And like I said, the thing that Twin Peaks has taught me is let it go, girl.
But when Frost comes out with a book called The Final Dossier, you kind of get the hint, like, yeah, maybe they're done. Yeah. I mean, I do think, listen,
I did read all of that.
I know people get angry when I say this kind of thing, but I do think Twin Peaks will come back at some point in our lifetime. It's too big of an IP to just let it just go. Now, they may wait till years later, you know what I mean? It will be a reboot of sorts. But we've lived long enough to know that things always come back.
Everything has a return. Everything has a return.
Even
this is compelling stuff.
Even one day, Lost will come back. There will be another series of Lost. Whether it makes it past season 1 is another story.
Everything has a return, man. And I really do see this, especially the sorts of stories it was telling and the way that it was telling those stories, and challenging people with the format, and being one of those shows that kind of set the bar for what prestige television would eventually turn into. I think that it's hard to underestimate its impact to me as a person, or to just the media landscape.
But it was really interesting to see Lynch and Frost kind of come back and be like, all right, guys, you've all matured. Everybody's doing this quality television now. Let's take it up another bar.
Right. Yeah, it was really what a great timing thing they pulled off with our generation to pull that timing to hit us right in high school and right in middle age with stories that were relevant to us.
And the fact that they were able to shoot it before, a lot of the cast members started passing away too.
I know. What a beautiful moment in time that they managed to capture before, losing Miguel and
Peggy and
everyone. Yeah, and just so many losses from the
and also, if they had waited just another year or two, they would, with the COVID lockdown, they would, just, it's amazing that it even exists.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real happy accident, right?
Right.
that everything came together, and that it could come together so many times, that people loved it so much that it could come back as many times as it did. That really is a testament to not just how compelling of a story it is, but to how meaningful it is to people who engage with it. That it still, means so much to people this far out.
Now, speaking of it's amazing it even exists,
Right.
I'm gonna turn the show over to you, because you said you had been watching this channel for a little bit, um, and I know that you are a fan of my film Queen of Hearts. So
Am.
I have to ask you, one, when did you first hear about it? And what were your thoughts about the idea of doing this? And then when you finally saw it.
So I heard about it around the time that I was moving, so like 2018.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I want to see more. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, I'm just going to keep my eye peeled and see what's going on. This could be really, really exciting. And then when I saw the first part, I was just absolutely just floored, because it feels perfectly at home between season 3 and season 2. And I you can do Twin Peaks wrong.
Of course.
Right. And it has to be super scary to take a property that you really, really love and try to pay homage to it. And you did such a good job. And like, I'm always scared when I see like a work, like, is this going to add to or take from? And it
Well,
added to.
there
Either
are
way,
other
it was
Twin
so
Peaks,
amazing.
fan projects that have been made,
There are.
and the thing you kind of the hurdle you have to jump over, at least in my opinion, is you cannot make it like you are trying to imagine how David Lynch would make this. You have to make it the way you would make it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And trust your instincts the way David Lynch trusts his own instincts.
Where you got to catch your own fish.
Right.
Right. As he would say.
Right. So people would ask me, while I was making it, like, well, is this going to be very Lynchian? I was like, no, I think it's just going to be, it's going to take place in this world, right? But it's going to be, told through my sensibilities. But I'm not going to negate who the characters are. It's just going to be, and I thought it was appropriate to do it that way because, while Cooper's in the film, a lot of it is told through Annie's point of view, which is different than Cooper's point of view in the original series. So it should feel a little different.
Right. Right.
That
And
was just my
that was one of the things
idea.
that I thought was interesting about Queen of Hearts, is that and I'm not saying this to bash anybody. Twin Peaks is definitely from the male gaze, from the male eye. And your film focuses more on the women's stories. And in particular, I know I'm working on a pretty long work saying, take Carolyn and Annie out of the fridge. It seems to me a lot of your focus has this feminist bent to it, and making them something more than just this, woman in trouble. Like, what made you decide to do that? What part of Twin Peaks inspired you to go to, like, I like Carolyn and Annie. I think there's a big story here.
Well, it came from two things. One was seeing the ending of season 2, right, where you're having Cooper seeing Caroline and Annie in the Black Lodge, both wearing the same dress.
Right.
Right. The fact that Annie came out of the Black Lodge in season 2 wearing the Miss Twin Peaks dress.
The Miss Twin Peaks dress, right.
But then in the Missing Pieces, when she's in the hospital, she's wearing the floral dress. So she's not even like being carried to the hospital wearing the same dress. So then that kind of dawned on me, like, well, that means that this has to be the second time she goes to the hospital. So what happened? Where there's a story in there. And then what finally cemented it was when Annie was in the bed with Laura in Fire Walk with Me and gave the message. And I thought, especially the ending of Fire Walk with Me, when you see Laura and Cooper in the Black Lodge, and you're thinking, and you see the angel, the idea is that the doppelganger's out there. And the real world, all hell is breaking loose, and yet they're safer in the Black Lodge.
Because they're away from the doppelganger.
Right. Yeah. And I kept thinking, my God, how bad does the world have to be for somebody like Annie Blackburn to have to go back in time and give this message to Laura? And I thought, there's a story there. And I thought, let's do the story of Annie post season 2 coming out of the lodge, being recruited by Major Briggs and others to give this message to Annie. At the same time, though, because Annie was created as sort of a redemption arc for Cooper with Caroline and Wyndham Earl, I thought it'd be really cool then to kind of Godfather 2, tell this, where you would then tell Cooper's story with Wyndham Earl and Caroline and cross cut this between both stories, so that at a certain point in the story, both women would be looking at each other in the Black Lodge wearing the same dress. And
that was a big moment emotionally. Yeah.
And I just thought that would be amazing to go back and forth between these two stories until both women meet. Now that was always the original concept, and I always thought that like Annie in the Black Lodge would be, I don't know, dealing with whatever her own nightmare inside the Black Lodge, and at one point she would, run into the drapes and throw the drape, and when throwing the drape, it would then be the comforter going over the bed, and then she would be in the bed with Laura, right? And then
that's cool.
And I thought that's, and that would be a way to kind of end it. And I thought that'd be cool. Just she gives the message, that'd be great. And then I never really thought about it, right? I was like, well, I'm never going to make this film. And then when I kind of proposed the idea and people watching the channel said, yeah, you should do it. And so I started exploring that and all that. But when it came time to, okay, we're going to make this, at that point, right around that time, the final dossier had come out. And I thought, right, well, since we're doing this, let's try and incorporate all of this material into it. And so that's why, you get Norma putting Annie into the hospital. You get the whole "I'm fine" sequence, which is something
I wrote down that "I'm fine" montage is so inspired, especially for anybody who has had any sort of mental health crisis. Beautiful.
and I thought, well, is it being a little silly, with the TV show names on her shirts?
No, I liked it.
And the reason why I eventually was okay with it is because I thought, well, Norma's getting clothes donated to the Double R Diner. She's taking it. Also, even though Annie's in the hospital, she'd want Annie to feel like she's still contemporary with what's going on in the world. And it allows us visually to know we're changing years.
Right. Yeah, I like that MTV shirt in particular.
Oh, yeah, that brings back nostalgia right there. And so I thought that'd be really cool to do that. Let's bring in the final dossier aspect. And so then I got to the point where I thought, this is spoilers for Queen of Hearts, so if you haven't seen it,
please watch it before you watch us.
So I thought we're going to have Annie at the end outside, and we're going to hear Carrie Page scream, and the lights were going to go out. And then I thought, okay, so Annie will kind of know that whatever plan is happening is now in process. And she was going to just go back into the house with Dean and Norma and Ed, and that would be the end of the movie. And that sat with me for about 5 minutes, literally. And then I thought, what am I doing? Like, this is the moment where I could have the Trinity all together. And she had talked to Laura in the bed. She had talked to Cooper as a little kid. And I thought, why don't take this moment, since it's the end of the movie, let's take this moment of her knowing that the lights are out. And, this is a young woman now who can basically teleport through time, right? She's right. I referred to her all the time as the Wonka Vader. She could go sideways and forwards and backwards and wherever she wanted. But she decides to just walk through the town till she gets to Laura's house. And I thought that would be so great as a fan at the end of the movie to take one last stroll in the dark through the town of Twin Peaks.
And the town we love so much, yeah.
Right. And then arrive at Laura's house, a few minutes past season 3, and not end it in sort of a happy ending way, but sort of an emotionally satisfying way that not only sums up Queen of Hearts, but also in a way summed up Annie's relationship with Laura and Cooper and kind of just bring it all together. And I've had conversations with people who are huge fans and podcasters and stuff, and they're like, I kind of liked your ending better. And I was like, well, it wasn't an attempt to make it better than season 3. I just wanted to, how could you end Queen of Hearts in a way that would make you emotionally satisfied and yet still want to see more? And I figured just kicking the can down the road a few minutes would be fun. And also let's just, make the ending so gonzo. Let's bring in the frog moss and Laura taking her face off and the woodsman and Alice Treatment on the steps and
It's gonna go big. Go big.
right. That's what I'm saying. Go big to the point where people are gonna like, oh my god, this is over the top, and then it ends. Like before it gets really over the top. You know what I mean? And I like the idea of her saying at the end, my name is Annie. I am now with Dale and Laura, as opposed to I was with Dale and Laura. You know what I mean? Like she's now saying we're all together. We are a team.
I like it because, and I find it more emotionally satisfying because it sort of rejects the almost nihilistic read that you can take away from season 3 if you're emotionally raw while watching it.
That's the thing. It's like season 3's ending is like you said, if you can look at it and feel very pessimistic about that ending. But I always felt a little optimistic about that ending because just like the end of Fire Walk with Me, right, where I thought, well, God, at least they're safe in the Black Lodge. Like always trying to, glass half full, right?
Right.
I was like, well, Laura's scream, yes, the trauma is there, but her scream blows out the electricity, and that's how the Black Lodge communicates and teleports and that kind of thing. So it kind of like in a way, it kind of hints that she has, the power to destroy this thing,
right.
And they ultimately will.
But she does have agency,
right
at that last moment to
because
ablate her trauma through processing it. Yeah.
If it had ended with Cooper somehow being whisked away and her alone on a dark street just screaming and crying
alone, yeah, that would be
that's right.
Well, and I was worried because for me, seeing Laura with the angel, I was like, okay, she's fine, she's safe. She has gone through all of these horrors. She's fine. She's safe in Fire Walk with Me. She's got an angel there.
Right.
This brings that same sort of feeling of she's not alone. She's got agency. There's an acknowledgement of who they are and the power and agency they have in this, which is hinted at in a lot of the Black Lodge scenes. Yeah, I
just like at the end of the film of Queen of Hearts where Annie's walking and no one's really kind of thinking about where she's going. She's just kind of like walking around. She passes Donna's house, which I think is very important because I always feel like if there's a continuation, I truly feel that, and maybe I'm gonna make a video about this at some point, that Donna is key moving forward here. But I thought people are gonna wonder like where the heck is she going? And then when she stops and it does that hard cut, and it's Cooper and Laura, Carrie, whatever, in the street, I knew that would be a moment where fans were like, "What the hell?" Because like I didn't tell anybody we were going there, so.
That's awesome.
I never showed any pictures of that prior to that ending dropping, and
kept it a secret.
And people were surprised. I mean, if you read the comments of that one, I mean, the people are just like, "Oh my god, I didn't see that coming," which is great because the hair is perfect. I mean, first of all, Ruby as Laura Palmer, she looks exactly like Cheryl Lee.
She does
with the blonde hair, and then when she's at Carrie Page, and I mean, I showed Cheryl Lee that picture, and she said, Cameron, I don't have my glasses on, but I swear that's me. I said, awesome. I said, Cheryl, I can assure you that is not you.
That's awesome.
So that made me really happy. So
okay, other than Lynch, and we talked a little bit about Godfather, what were some of your other influences directorially as you put this project together?
Well, directorially, I just Martin Scorsese has this great saying years ago where he said, you have to just put it down the way you see it. Like trust your instincts, the way you see it, the way you want to tell it. Yeah, you're going to have to change maybe some things when you're on the set and, maybe, this angle doesn't quite work, but put it down the way you want to see it. Godfather 2 was inspiration. Dead Again, Kenneth Branagh's film, was inspiration. The idea of telling two stories simultaneously, whereas like Godfather 2 is you're with one story, then you cut to another story, and then you slowly go back and forth. I wanted that. But I also wanted the frenzied nature of Dead Again at a certain points where it's just moving back and forth.
Yeah, there is a pretty crazy oscillation that happens in Dead Again that really brings that frenetic energy into it.
But because you are so, where you are in both of the stories, it's not confusing. Right. But I wanted a moment where, like, you're with Annie, then with Caroline, then you're with Wyndham, and then Cooper, and then with, and back and forth. And there's a moment halfway through Queen of Hearts where we're dealing with Tulpa Annie at Norma's house, real Annie with Dean, Cooper with Caroline, Cooper with Wyndham Earl, and we're doing 2 or 3 different timelines all back and forth, and nobody's confused watching this film.
Yeah, you've done really well at establishing a language for each of those storylines that's easy to follow as a viewer. How'd you do that?
I trusted the story I was telling, that you would be. I mean, I figure, if you're watching Twin Peaks, you have intelligence, Yeah,
you're not the run of the mill.
But I think it's because, like Lynch at his best, when you are emotionally engaged, you're connected to the material.
Absolutely.
Right? And I again, I'm not putting myself on the same pedestal as Lynch and Frost, but I know a lot of fans who, went into this thing open-minded and were rather surprised how connected they were to this material. I think a lot of it is nostalgia, right? Because we do love these characters. We want to see more of these characters. It also has to do with the fact that the actors killed it.
Yeah.
It did. I mean, because without these actors, this thing doesn't work at all.
Yeah, there's amazing.
And I spent a long time casting this thing, and it wasn't my choice, But like, some people got on board early and then left. Other people would stay on. Other people at the last minute would quit, or schedules, whatever like that. Again, this is a low budget film. This isn't
right. You can't demand a lot of people on the low budget film.
Right, but when the right people got on, that is when the entire production kicked into gear. For a long time, it was just stop starts, and like things would happen, and then people would jump off because, oh no, we're not going to be shooting for a while because we can't get this location for a while, blah blah blah. And then Maddie, who plays Annie, when she came on and she was like, yeah, I'll totally help you, produce the film as well. Well, then I had, like, Cooper and Laura, right? There was 2 of us. So life is a lot sometimes easier when you have
the first follower is so important when it's
not even a follower, it's a partner. It's a it's a friend. It's somebody who you realize that you're not having to carry the weight of this entire and I wasn't just carrying the weight of this production. I was carrying the weight of all the naysayers in the fan community who wanted this film to never get made and to fail. So not only am I trying to
that whole entire viewpoint,
because there are gatekeepers all around, and and they want it to be Lynch or nothing, or Lynch or them.
Right? Yeah, I actually I'm still working on that book about fandom.
Yeah, I mean, there was one person on Reddit who wrote, "Why does this guy get to make this film?"
Go make your own.
And somebody wrote back going, well, you can make your own as well. And also, he, got the community together to support this project. That's why. Like, it's not impossible for you to do your own.
Right. Right. Like that's unfortunate. That's one of the unfortunate things about fandom is it can really do a great thing of keeping a property alive and being supportive of each other. And it's something you see time and time again because I'm working on a longer work about fandom. And when it goes wrong, they can also be extremely toxic and damaging to the property and its legacy. So
the best part about Queen of Hearts, and you're a Twin Peaks fan, you don't have to watch it.
Yeah. You can skip it. You can, what's great about anything that you totally hate, you don't have to engage with it probably.
No, I mean, nobody is forcing you to watch it. But I will say this, for those who didn't like season 3, maybe you would like this film, or maybe this would help you like season 3 more, because once you start seeing Annie and Jackrabbit's Palace and Freddy like mixed in, you start to feel like, oh, like much how season 3 put Fire Walk with Me into context. Queen of Hearts kind of puts a lot of the other
It's
aspects.
just a nice little bridge, you know.
It's
Ties it
I
together.
consider it a 4-hour missing piece.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. So, okay, how long did it take you to write? You started thinking of the story concept back
when
when you
the
saw.
Fire Walk with Me, and it was just kind of that initial story was just kind of like, how did Annie get to see Laura, and let's tell Cooper's story with Caroline and cross cut it. That was basically what it was, and I didn't do anything with it. And then I thought, I had seen another fan film that was only like a few minutes long, but it was getting a lot of traction online. I thought, well, you know what, that'd be fun to do. I'd love to do it, but I knew that my film would be a little bit longer. Wasn't sure how long, but I figured it would be, it'd be longer. And so I kind of floated this idea of like, oh, should I do it? And people were saying you should do it. So I didn't start writing it. I mean, I had thought about it and this kind of thing, and I knew the beats of it and I knew what I wanted to do with it. But obviously the final dossier hadn't come out yet. So I didn't have
Right.
that aspect. And then I also didn't want to start writing because if I didn't get the opportunity to make it, that would kill me even more.
Oh, that would suck.
So I kind of waited till we got the green light to make it. And then I was like, okay, I guess we're going to make it. So then I sat down to write it. And
Was there anything in your original concept of what the story was going to be that didn't make it into the final cut because you had so much?
No. The only thing that didn't get made was the sequence we had to cut out because of COVID.
Talk about that.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a scene in the film where Annie is like, she comes out of the bathroom and she's trying on this dress and she sees Dean asleep on the bed and then she kind of decides, okay, enough of this nonsense. If the Black Lodge wants me, I'm gonna just confront it head on and come what may. And
do this thing. Yeah.
Right. And then she just kind of allows the Black Lodge to kind of, take her essence in. And that's not at all what was on the script. And that was only because of COVID. What was on the script was that because there was a whole sequence, because Dean's part of the Bookhouse Boys, and there was a whole sequence where her, Dean, and a lot of the other Bookhouse Boys, they have been planning this thing where they're gonna take her into the woods to Jackrabbit's Palace. And while they're in the woods, they're kind of offed one by one, or they just start like she turns around and they're no longer there, until the point that she's alone in the woods. And then at that point, she starts like backing up because she starts seeing the woods kind of almost encompassing her. And then at that point, she realizes she stepped back into the lodge and the drapes shut in front of her, and she's in the lodge. We didn't get to shoot that entire sequence. We couldn't have a lot of people together, even though it was outside. And so I thought, well, we already shot the Black Lodge sequence when you're in this dress. So we got to get you in the dress and into the lodge. So, and then she thought, Maddie thought, oh, maybe we should, maybe we should just have Annie just like leave the house and like walk into the woods and stuff like that. And I was like, it's like, no, I'd rather have it be more like, like you said, Fire Walk with Me, it's very more intimate. It's a choice she's making. She's not being tricked into the lodge. She's
choosing to go there. That's her agency.
Right.
That's what I love so much about Annie and Queen of Hearts. She has agency.
So it's a complete. So I told Maddie, I said, what I want to do is basically do the opposite of what the sequence was going to be. Because otherwise, if we do sort of like a half-assed version of it, I'll always watch the film and say, oh, this is the part where COVID kicked in and we had to change some things. Whereas now I can look at it and say, well, we just did the complete opposite of what we were going to do. And that, in a way, made it different. You know what I mean? It made it a different thing altogether. So I have to accept it on its own terms, as opposed to like, well, this is the abbreviated version of what. So Dean is talked about as being a Bookhouse Boy. There's no other Bookhouse Boy in the film. There are a bunch in the script. So we basically eliminated all the Bookhouse Boy sequences, and there were, there's only like 3 or 4, but still they were big, they were prominent, and but we still are represented by that. So that was a huge sequence. That was but we didn't shoot it and then we cut it out. Like we just couldn't shoot it at all.
Were there any other impacts of COVID on your production? I know that you had it hit at a really, I mean, there's no convenient time for a global pandemic to hit, but
we had 2 weeks left of shooting. And because it was during spring break, so that all the actors were going to be easily available. So we compacted or decided to shoot a bunch of sequences during spring break, and of course we shut down the Friday before spring break. So when we got back together in the summertime, because of people's schedules and people were moving and that type of thing, we had a week. So basically, other stuff just got dropped. Like there was a few more scenes in the FBI office we were going to shoot. We couldn't shoot that because we couldn't get back into a building, right? With COVID. The big change was the ending on the gazebo, because we had a gazebo on the lake that matches perfectly for what you see in Twin Peaks.
right.
And we were going to have Cooper and Annie together alone at the lake with the gazebo, and we'd be able to shoot close-ups and long shots and beautiful vistas and stuff like that. Well, the gazebo that's in my town is there's like other things around it, so we couldn't shoot long vistas. So everything just became, instead of them walking around the lake and talking and conveying emotions and stuff, we had to basically just have them sit down on the steps of the gazebo and shoot in close-ups. But I mean, people still kind of know where you are. So that sequence is shot very differently than the way we were intending. And yet, because the actors are so good, it doesn't matter. Because
it feels pretty big, actually. Feels a lot like those scenes in Twin Peaks at the gazebo. So
right, that's what I'm saying. Like it works that way, but it's not as visually amazing as I was wanting it, because we had the whole park reserved with the gazebo and the lake, and we basically rented it like we were doing like a wedding venue, basically, right? And we were going to take over that whole area. Didn't happen, and so we had to shoot everything in close up, which in a way is not the way it was intended to be shot. And yet, because the characters are being acted so well, and at that point in the story you're so hopefully emotionally engaged, it doesn't seem to matter to people.
You're pretty into it at that point. So if you're not into it, you would have bailed far before the gazebo part. Like right. You're in it to get right. to the end.
The other thing was that we couldn't find a diner that would let us shoot there. We found a few diners that would match for pretty good match of what Double R or Tweed's diner would look like, or and just trying to make this day is not available, this day, and then the actors were mostly available, but sometimes it was like, how are we going to get them all there? Because right. It wasn't just because even people say, well, why didn't you go shoot it at Tweed's itself? And it's like, well, because I would have to fly up Annie,
because you'd have to take everybody.
Annie, Cooper, Major Briggs, Norma, Wyndham Earl, Shelley. Right, that's 6 people to fly up there to shoot this scene. I can't really do that with the budget. So we just decided that where we are at the hospital, there was a little 50s diner, little compartment, small
little train car diner sort of thing.
Yeah, but it was still like, it had the right seats and the look, and we thought, okay, let's do that. And we shot it there, and it worked, and it was fine. Then wonderful Twin Peaks artist Maya Lundgren says to me, you know what I've been working on? I said, what? She goes, I've been working on a 360-degree visual diorama of the Double R Diner. Oh, really? Yeah, basically, wherever your camera is, it would register where you are in the diner. Oh, really?
That's cool.
So even though we didn't shoot it on green screen, which would have made things a lot easier, because we weren't thinking this was a possibility when we were, shooting the sequence. Ben Oliver, who did the special effects for the film, the visual effects on in post, was able to isolate all the actors out frame by frame, which took forever in a day, like months, and put them on Maya's Double R Diner backgrounds.
Wow.
Which, so that's why, like, you know, it's like they're in the Double R Diner at the end. Like, you know, it's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Right. And then wherever the effects, because, you know, the actors' movements and stuff like that were you know, hard to match some
The
of it.
match.
We just allowed that to be part of the glitch of, because the time frames are
Yeah, because the time frames are all weird at that point.
right.
Yeah,
So again,
brilliant.
it's the whole Lynch happy accident thing. If you know, if you're gonna do it, commit to it, and enjoy the ride. So,
Right. See where it takes you.
right.
So what talk to me about, because I know that you went through a process where you actually contacted Showtime or the producers to ask if it was okay, right? Which
Well, at that point, it was like, you know, it was right after season 3. I had no idea if they were gonna do a season 4. I mean, I kind of assumed they were gonna do a season 4. Just I don't know, it's just the vibe I
everybody
got.
kind of did. I mean, I know that all the fans I talked to kind of assumed that this was just a setup for 4.
Because Kyle MacLachlan himself had taken to Twitter saying, like, you know, everything's going to come together at the end. So
Mhm.
I wasn't expecting a sort of you know you know, you know
There's
that
one word that comes to mind, but it's a naughty one.
no, but I wasn't expecting a cliffhanger type of ending. Now,
Right.
I can look at it now as not a cliffhanger type of ending, but at the time, at that moment in 2017, it kind of felt like a cliffhanger ending,
It did.
right?
It did.
So
It didn't sit right. It felt
right,
like, oh, this has got to go someplace else.
and
It can't stop
because
here.
you know, and you know, and I had been talking about the show all summer long with tons of people. It was a great time, and so when this idea of doing Queen of Hearts came up, I thought, well, I had certain, you know, some of the cast and crew from the show on. I had Sabrina Sarlin, who, you know, executive produced the whole season 3. She's been talked about as being like the primary reason why season 3 ultimately came together, because Lynch at one point had walked away and that type of thing. So
Right.
she had just been on my show. So I thought, we have so many mutuals, right? And I thought might talk about this film. They might, you know, with the crowdfunding, we might, you know, get some
Might make a
traction.
splash. Right.
We might. I don't know. Or it could land with a thud. I don't know. So before I even announced anything, planned anything, I reached out to her and I said, listen, this is what I'm thinking of doing. This is why I'm thinking of doing it. Obviously, this is not made for profit. This is entirely made out of love. I don't know if you guys are planning on diving into any of this material in future, you know, times or whatever, but this is what my intent would be with it. It is not to, you know, tread on anybody's ground. This is just, you know, merely, you know, a fans. You gave so much to us. This is my way of feeling like I want to give my love back to you guys. And she wrote back and she said, I just want you to know that David Lynch, you know, is more than likely never going to watch it, because obviously he doesn't want it to cloud
Because
his
he's David
thoughts.
Lynch. Right.
Oh yeah, of course. And again, I never even thought for a million years like that was an intent. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, I want to make this so David Lynch sees it. Like, I never even thought
Right.
for a second that was even an option. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on anybody's toes.
Wearing down somebody's copyright, right?
Well, I mean, you know, it's just kind of
You
like,
also want to like tell people I'm playing in your sandbox.
right. And if this is something you do not want to happen at all, now is the perfect time to tell me, and I won't even attempt this. Right.
Right.
But, you know, Sabrina got back to me and she said, you know, I think it's lovely, and I think it's a great idea, and I can't wait to watch it. Fantastic. So so I progressed on, you know, but it wasn't like saying, like, you know, some people have said, like, you know, I remember at the time, like, they wanted it to say, you know, Showtime presents or David Lynch and Mark Frost
Right.
presents, and I'm like, that is never going to happen. Do you know what a fan work is? Right.
Right.
And I mean, there's been other, fan works that have come out before and since and all that. So I'm hoping that people now know what it is. But I mean, if you see Queen of Hearts, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you see it, that film I made is not stepping on anybody's toes in the Twin Peaks universe, creators or otherwise. And in fact, in my opinion, it makes you love their work even more.
It's an extremely loving piece. Like it's obviously made with a lot of love from like everybody involved. Obviously, really loved what they were doing and the story they were telling and the legacy of the story they were telling. Um, I, I I can't understand how anybody would say, "Oh yeah, that's trampling on anything." It's beautiful.
Because
It's
I
wonderful.
think it's the fear of the unknown,
Sure,
right?
sure.
I mean, there's people out there in the Twin Peaks fan community that don't like me for whatever reason. And so they're like, again, why does he get to make this film? Again, and that comes
Because you started.
right. Well, that's the thing. It's like what they're really saying is, why can't I do it?
And
And
you
my
can.
argument, yeah, that's what I've said. Like, who's stopping you?
Right, like totally make one. I will watch it. I mean, I've watched, a lot of fan works and
But
yeah, make
here's
your
the thing.
own.
There's a lot of people that think they understand the world of Twin Peaks, and they don't. Right? And there's a lot of people who can talk about it, but they don't feel it. Right? And
Right.
that's, again, I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of know-it-alls out there, but they don't
Yes.
feel it. Right? And what I was trying to show with Queen of Hearts is it's I think about the show, but I feel it so intensely. Um and though again, those with open minds who have seen it, they feel that when they watch the film. I mean, they as again, everybody sees Twin Peaks, differently at times, but anybody who's like, a longtime fan of Twin Peaks and really understands the material, when they watch that film, they go, this film understands Twin Peaks. I've had, one person say, um, you know, has this guy ever seen Twin Peaks before? This isn't made like David Lynch and Mark Frost would make Twin Peaks. Yes, exactly, because I'm not
Yeah.
David Lynch or Mark Frost, right?
Well, also, okay, it's funny that they say that because one of my questions was a lot of people have pulled, from different areas of the series. The Summer House at Pearl Lakes pulls from the story of Leland, etc. Your story pulls from a lot of really weird Twin Peaks properties, like stuff that I didn't think that other fans had engaged with, like the Diane tapes, the autobiography of Dale Cooper, not just like the Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. So I have to ask, there are some pretty ridiculous things that were part of canon in those books. I'm thinking of Caroline's storyline, her particularly tragic setup and abuse by Wyndham Earle. Have people pushed back on you on those pieces? Have a lot of people engaged with those other like works? Do they recognize it? Because I got so excited. I'm like, hey,
Um, there's not a lot of people who talk about Twin Peaks online. There are people who make posts on Twitter, but there's not a lot of people who write about it. There's not a lot of people who do podcasts about it. And a lot of people who do podcasts about it, not everybody, but there's some, other ones out there that have
sure.
who have chosen not to acknowledge that Queen of Hearts ever exists. So I don't get that. I mean, everybody who I've talked to, Joel Bacco, Twin Peaks Unwrapped guys, I've gotten zero pushback from it. And if I was going to get pushback, I'd probably get it from them. But, so I said, okay, I'm going to tell the story of Cooper, Wyndham, and Caroline. And I
It's a
thought, okay, that's
crazy
great.
story.
But I remember going, okay, well, what is their story? And then I thought, oh yeah, obviously the Cooper, diary, My Life, My Tapes. But
My life, my
but
tapes.
even that is like weirdly off because that all takes place in the 1970s.
Yep.
And then in the show, he tells Harry that, 4 years ago, we were taking care of Caroline, which makes it 85.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. How could it be 1977? Like this, I'm not going Serpico with this. So I thought, okay, what I elected to do was just take the basic structure of what their relationship was in that section and kind of do an adaptation. Now, there's stuff I left out, but it wasn't stuff that I negated and said that didn't happen. It's just we cut back to Annie during that part. Maybe it happened and we didn't see it. So I never negated anything they said.
Oh no, I was actually just thrilled to see somebody acknowledging that those pieces of the story had happened, because I felt like maybe I had fever dreamed the autobiography of Dale Cooper.
Especially when Cooper is sitting there talking with Caroline about his family,
right,
and that whole thing
with Marie,
with the whole thing with Marie, which was for anyone who was a longtime Twin Peaks fan, that whole thing with Marie was legendary when that book came out, because it was like, what is this about?
Right? I remember. Yes.
And so I thought that is something we're going to have to get into. We're going to have to acknowledge it. And I really like that, because Cooper in this story, in that scene with Caroline, becomes like a fully fledged like human being in that moment. Not that he wasn't before, but he never sat around with Audrey and talked about his family.
Right. Well, and that's what I like about being able to spend more time with Dale Cooper here, is you get to see more of the man than just the agent. You know, you see a lot more behind him and his actual relationships, intimate relationships.
So even though he's Dale Cooper and he, he talks to Diane, all that kind of stuff, my feeling was, let's make him more Jeffrey Beaumont in Blue Velvet than Dale Cooper, and let's save the Dale Cooper, the real Dale Cooper we know from the show. Let's not have that come out until Caroline is dead.
Well, and that makes sense, because that is the inciting incident for the Dale Cooper we know. That's why he keeps everybody at a distance, because of this terrible thing.
So I wanted to show him being with his guard down. He's still Dale Cooper, but he has his guard down. He's talking. He's
heart on his sleeve.
Heart on his sleeve. Wants the mentor relationship, right? Kind of surprised by the whole Caroline thing. And then obviously Caroline dies, and he's like fully Agent Cooper. And you see that in Nico's performance, because when you get to that Double R Diner scene at the end, like, he's totally Cooper at that moment. And Cooper. And same thing with Maddie as Annie, because like people have said to me, well, this Annie is so different than the way it is in the show. And I said, yeah, because this is post season 2, post Black Lodge Annie. She obviously is a little like, well, I guess that happened. She's a little angry. Right. She's very upset. And so people, it was interesting, because I originally released this thing in parts, right, before it was like the full film. And so people just assumed that Nico and Maddie were doing their own sort of characterizations of these characters. And then when you see them in other scenes where they are kind of reenacting scenes from the show, you realize, oh no, that's their character. That's their choice, because where they came from is over here. Do you know what I mean? Like they can do the whole spectrum.
When they were performance matching, there's some incredible moments in those performance matching things.
And it's unbelievable.
Testament to your cast.
Oh yeah, but emotionally, they feel like Cooper and Annie together.
They do, and all of the people who participated and had to bring these characters back to the screen, that had to be extremely nerve-wracking. What was it like to direct them through those nerves?
They really didn't even think about it. I mean,
good.
I mean, Nico was, worried at first about like, well, Kyle is so, I told him, I said, listen, Kyle is Cooper, right? It was created for him. It's based off his personality. It's, nothing we can do about it. He's just that character.
But it's a character.
I said, if you play him trying to be Kyle, it's going to be messy. So I told him, I said, just look at Jeffrey Beaumont in Blue Velvet. That's why you see his hair. His hair is more Jeffrey Beaumont than Cooper. And I said, we're going to get to the Cooper eventually, but let's just play him as like, he's a little eccentric, but he's the nicest guy on the planet, right? And also, he's a little bewildered, because it's like, is there something going on between Wyndham and Caroline? Are they playing him as a joke?
Right? Is
Right.
this a big game in
Right.
which I've
And
entered?
that's where another thing would have been Polanski's Bitter Moon, which is about a couple that's playing a joke on Hugh Grant. I thought, let's bring in some aspects of that, especially with the whole like Christmas presents at the dinner table and stuff like that. Let's just kind of just make Cooper just go, what on earth is going on around here? And making Caroline, like, you see her in a certain way around Wyndham. She's very animated. She's very, she goes loud, she goes quiet, but then around Cooper, she's still herself, but it's more, you can see that
You
it's muted. It's almost like she's putting on performance for Wyndham, right?
that's how I actually read it, is that she had to be somebody so entirely different from her own person in order to just survive her domestic life. A lot of domestic abuse survivors will mask around the perpetrators, so that felt true and real to me.
Well, that was the thing. I felt like, what would being married to Wyndham Earl for 10 years look like?
Terrible. Like, my God. And okay,
I
what
mean,
is his name? Is
the
it
only thing
Paul? Is
we
it
never
Paul who played
hang
Wyndham?
on, hang on a second. The It's not in the script. There was nothing ever in the script. But if there was one scene that I wish we could have done somewhere, but there just was no room in the script to do it, so I didn't even write a scene like this. I would have loved to have seen Caroline in the courtroom.
Yeah, I would love to see her lawyer.
Because I would have loved to have seen her completely on point and professional, and then contrast that with her home life, so you could see that she could turn it on and turn it off,
Yeah, that would have been cool.
or knew in this setting I have to be this way.
But she's obviously doing all the code switching thing when you see her between the two men in her life. So
Right.
yeah, that would
Right.
be cool to see her do even a third.
Right.
Third
And I thought, well, how about when she's missing, like, have a scene of like Cooper going to her work and like maybe talking with one of her colleagues and then I thought, nah, because the only thing that's going to come out of that is she's still missing. and maybe they would say something about Wyndham, which would tip Cooper off, which would be not good because Cooper's not supposed to know anything about Wyndham. You know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, and then we'd have to get the an office scene in a courthouse, and so I was like, I didn't even write that scene because ultimately at the end of the scene we would have been right where we were at the beginning of the scene. So I just said, forget it. But yeah, Paul played Wyndham, and he said to me, he said, well, how do you want me to play this? Like, you want me to play this like Wyndham Earl in season 2? I said, nope. I said, that is him years later, and that's him office frickin' rocker. I want you to play this as like just the nicest guy, because I said everybody watching this knows who Wyndham Earl is.
Yeah, we all know who he's going to be.
Right. So I said, I want you just to, play it, maybe a little twinkle in your eye here and there, but for the most part, just play it straight because we all know what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, he played a psycho great.
That's what I'm saying.
He was fabulous.
You can see that guy becoming Wyndham Earl years later.
Absolutely. That's why his performance was so great, is because you could see that the genetics of later Wyndham in the performance that he gave. And when that whole like escalation, when he goes and he stabs Cooper, his body work in that is fabulous.
When he comes around the corner and he's just like,
yes. This terrifying stab demon. He was great.
Well, the idea for that was that because Cooper, when he's talking to Harry, he says, Harry, I think he's the one that killed her, and like he still doesn't know who did it, and he doesn't know that Wyndham Earl.
That's what he tells himself.
No, I know that, but I'm saying like he's even relaying like 4 years later, even after all the investigations, he still doesn't know, and so I was like, oh, you know what? So that means that he's got to be attacked from behind.
And trauma does crazy things to the memory. Right.
But I also put in that moment too from the My Life, My Tapes of Wyndham talking to himself in the kitchen.
Oh, and when he backs back and sits down and gets himself ready.
He throws the knife. Yeah.
It's so great. It's just it brings back all of the terror that Wyndham kind of introduced, because he's such a smart psycho. Like that's
Right.
why he seemed so
Right. And you
dangerous.
wanted, and then of course you start to wonder, it's like, what was Wyndham Earl doing this entire time while Cooper and Caroline were together? It's almost like, did
Plotting.
he's it's almost like he wanted to get rid of Caroline, so he set Cooper up
Uh-huh.
so that he would have a reason to do it.
That's
He
what
didn't
I
want to
felt
just
like.
he
He
didn't
was
want to
looking
just
for a way to do this. Yeah.
he couldn't just kill Caroline. He wanted a reason to do it. He wanted Cooper to make him jealous, to get that right. And if fear and love open the doors, right, he's wanting to get that rage in there. One of my favorite scenes of Cooper and Caroline is when they're talking and they're realizing that Wyndham's probably known about this. And then that's when we get Cooper telling her the poem and stuff like that. Because, like, I think at that point in the film, you're watching it and you go, "Oh my God, it's right, the poem." You know what I
Right.
mean?
Like, oh
And
no.
he talks about in the show, like, this is the poem I sent Caroline. Well, in my film, I say, yeah, he sent it to her, but she never got it, which means Wyndham got it, which means that he was onto them.
Yeah, that's really great. I love how you tie all of those, I don't want to call them loose ends, but
Yeah, they
tie
were.
all of your storylines into these moments. And the other person who I really loved, and I don't want to, short, Charlotte or Maddie or Nico of their performances, because obviously the three major people that we spend the most time with are just knocking it out of the park. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the person who plays Garland Briggs.
Yeah, Larry.
Wow.
He what's funny is that when he was originally cast, he was going to play Annie's stepdad, and then that actor fell through. Wait, no, sorry. Yeah, he was going to play the stepdad, and then the actor that was going to play Briggs fell through. And so I said, "Oh my God, what are we going to do for this?" And I said, "He's kind of a major character." And Larry says, and he's a voice actor and he does stuff like an anime and everything. And he's a local actor around here. And again, he was already involved. His wife was already involved. And, and so he said, "I'd really like to play Major Briggs." Now, if you've ever seen a picture of Larry, he's got full set of hair, goatee,
Yeah.
everything. Nothing that looks nothing like Major Briggs. And I said, and he's like, "I want to play Major Briggs." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, what are we going to do about the hair?" He goes, I'll shave the hair." I said, "All right." Again, he's a play actor. So I was like, "All right, let's do it." And he was like, at first, he's like, "Let me look into a ball cap." And he's like, "The ball cap's not going to look good. I can do it." And then,
God bless him.
And then we had the whole Major Briggs outfit. And, up until that day, I was like, well, Larry's playing Major Briggs. We're going to do the best we can. We need this character in the film. All right. So he goes into where we're shooting at the hospital, gets changed, comes back around the drapes, and I'm like on the other side of the room, and he goes, "What do you think?" And I turn around and I see him, kind of like the way Annie first sees him in distance, and I said, "Holy crap!" Like, without even the voice, I was like, just in stature, it looked like Major Briggs was here. And then when he said, "I've been really working on the voice," and I said, "That is perfect."
Yeah, his cadence is perfect.
And so that scene in the hospital, when you, like, people seem to be really enjoying the film when they watch it, but it's that scene in the hospital between Annie and Major Briggs where people I've been told where they feel like, okay, this movie's playing for real now, because this is sort of like where they thought season 3 would have been in 1991 if it had been renewed. That Annie and Major Briggs would team up, because obviously they would.
They were
be the only
they were
ones
the
that
ones
would know about the
closest.
right.
Right.
And when you see that scene between Annie and Major Briggs, it's it's hard not to get a little moved and emotionally overwhelmed at times, because it really does kind of feel like Annie and Major Briggs talking.
Yeah, and
They're so good.
It feels so good to have those two characters being able to connect these two. It's just like, oh yeah, that would totally be great for both of them. And then,
dramatically speaking, it makes sense for them to
yes,
meet.
Yes, especially, looking at who was with Cooper when, who knows about the lodge at all, who
Right.
has the most experience with that kind of, because
Let's
this is some real esoteric phenomena, right?
let's mention how great Maddie and Nico were in that scene with the doppelganger in the hospital.
Ah, fabulous. That was one of the scenes where I was like, wow, they've really, really got something here. Because first, I really love that you allowed Annie to be angry. She
Yeah.
deserves her anger. She's earned that anger. I
And what's
can't
interesting,
believe.
I've had
Go
fans
ahead.
say to me, like, I never thought about it like that from Annie's point of view. And I said, isn't it interesting
Oh,
when you look at it from her point of view? Cooper's a jerk.
yeah, yeah, A1 jerk. Like, what? You tell everybody but me. Like, I'm
He
just
he
bait
got he
to
got
you.
he got Audrey, Shelley, and Donna all together and told them that Wyndham Earl was in town hunting them, but he's
But
prancing around
not
on a
Annie.
lake with Annie,
And can't
right?
can't mention it. Like, oh yeah, by the way, so this guy who's probably mad at me for being with his wife.
Right.
No,
And I
don't
think
bring
I
that
think
up.
that's the
And that
aspect of
feels real too.
it is because he was so
So
kind of
enamored with.
nervous and ashamed of like, oh, I was slept with my partner's wife. How can I tell that to my new girlfriend? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. And
yeah,
that's what I love about it is it's such a human, relatable story
right,
for these characters. For a lot of Twin Peaks fans who, we bonded with these characters when we were like teenagers. What do you do when you're older? You've looked back and say, "Hey, what would that really feel like? What would that emotional moment actually be for everybody else in the scene?"
right.
And yeah, their whole doppelganger thing in the hospital was like, I have to know more. I
Well,
need
especially,
more.
and she's so angry and intense at him, and yet she never leaves the hospital bed. And
Yeah, it's really
she's
hard to
looking up
be
at him.
the person who has physically the least power in a situation and be emoting the most power. And she is
And
great at
and
that.
and so much so that he grabs her, looks at her, and this is the woman in her bed, and yet she got him. You know what I mean? She's got his number, or at least the original Cooper's number, not the doppelganger. Of course, she doesn't know it's a doppelganger, but he
Right.
grabs her and he just lets her go and leaves. And of course, later on, we find out that she's the one that planted Audrey's name into it.
Right. Right.
Right.
It's
So then you
uh,
have the guilt of that whole thing,
right.
right? But I mean, they're so good in that scene, and like it's just when I dropped that first part, I thought, well, this is going to be the make or break moment. This is where people are either going to say this is complete crap, or they're going to be on board. I don't think there's any in between, and people they were on board for them. I mean, I know there's haters out there, but I mean, the vast majority who have seen it, who have talked to me about it or written comments, they get it. They understand it.
Well, because it's really written from the heart of a Twin Peaks fan, and that's what I love so much about it. Is how sometimes a TV show. I'm going to pick on King of the Hill because they're easy to pick on. King of the Hill towards the end, like season 13, it's like they forgot what happened in the first 12 seasons. They threw out their Bible. This was made from somebody who revered that television show's Bible, and I can appreciate that. And I think that kind of love and passion really shows in like every performance.
Even the
It's
things
really
that like
great piece.
even the things that like seem like disconnected pieces throughout the series or the movie, Queen of Hearts kind of brings it all together to show you, no, this all can coexist. Jackrabbit's Palace can coexist with My Life, My Tapes. It's okay. It can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and when you see Annie at Jackrabbit's Palace, which by the way is the last time on
That it was
camera
captured.
that it was captured, um, it's just very, to me, exciting seeing Annie just running towards the,
Goosebumps.
yeah.
Mm.
And then when she's in the Black Lodge when the nuns come, You know,
I love that. So creepy.
I figured if Lynch can put an angel in the lodge, I can put it in a nun. And also, Hawk even says in this series that everybody goes through their own experience in there.
Right. It's going to be using the symbols and the dream language that the person that is experiencing the lodge would know it. So everybody's going to live their own hell. Everybody's going to have their own angel.
And then when she
comfort.
sees Wyndham bringing her in from the Miss Twin Peaks contest, and you hear the applause.
The applause, so weird and so great.
But it's also that's Wyndham Earl. You know, there's a friend of mine, Josh, who said to me when he saw that moment. I mean, he felt it before, but he felt with that moment that I knew what I was doing, because he goes, that is Wyndham's megalomania right there. You know, it's like look at me.
Look at me, I did it.
Yeah.
I solved your mystery code. Now I'm king of the lodge. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so you're just thinking, oh yeah, I know what happens next. Yeah, it's really
and then
great.
even having, you know, there's even like a little Harold Smith reference in there too, and so because I think there's connections between Annie and Harold Smith, it's I can't believe we pulled off the Black Lodge as well as we did.
It looked great.
I mean, that was the thing, as Maddie said to me, if we get the lodge right, it'll go a long way in case some of the other things don't come out as good. Yeah, the best part is that we ended up getting it done, I felt like, correctly overall. So, but that was the thing, was like, if we get the lodge wrong, we're done. So that was a big thing. And I also wanted like moving cameras in the lodge as well. So like there's that opening scene of like the doppelganger running out and grabbing Annie, because we never see how they get out of the lodge. And at the end of season 2, all of a sudden there's a beam, and then they're there on the ground. I wanted to show her screaming and him running out of the lodge and grabbing her out, you know?
Right. What was the most surprisingly hardest shot for you to get? Like, what was the thing that took like way more times for you to get the shot than you thought it would?
Oh God. Honestly, I don't know, because it was.
You had a blessed time of everything coming together.
Well, the actors were so good, you know, and I mean, the hardest thing with the actors, and again, this is not a knock on them at all, is that, you know, again, it's a low budget production, so a lot of people are like, some people are traveling to get to the set, some people are just getting off work, you know, that type of thing, and so it was like, just sometimes it took a few takes, not because they were bad, but because you had to kind of get them out of left brain to right brain, you know, and so sometimes that was a little difficult, because not so much that, but like sometimes we only had locations or things for a certain amount of time. So it was like, we need to make sure we got it. And sometimes we would do a few more extra takes than maybe we needed necessary, but only because I knew we couldn't come back. So it was like, let's just make sure we have something, you know? But I mean, like, the thing that I was surprised and kind of shocked by was how well, and I mean, I knew it worked in the script, but I was kind of surprised by how well the whole Annie backstory thing played out.
That was great. I loved learning more about Annie. She's Annie.
I knew that, again, when you're reading the script, it made sense, but like, again, it's like, you know, you're watching this film, you know, are people really going to be on board for this thing long enough to go into this whole thing? And seems like people really were, because of that, I mean, people kind of surprised by it. And but I mean, again, if you read the final dossier, it talks about the most, one of the cool things about that was that Frost had said that it happened around Christmas time this evening. And when we went to shoot the scene, it was like early January. And so the house we were shooting at, they still had their tree set up.
Nice.
And they said, and they were like, "Oh, would you like us to put the lights back on?" And I said, "Oh, would you?"
Yeah, and, perfect.
So I mean, I thought we were just going to be able to shoot that part of the book but I didn't think we were able to get the Christmas aspect into it, right?
That's awesome.
But then we were able to get the whole. So when she comes in and she sees the tree, I mean, it's just like, because anyone who's read the book knows what's coming. And then when the stepdad leaves and the mom, you hear it in the background, you hear screeching tires going because he's like driving away. But in the final dossier, it talks about how he screeched away from the house. The mom went after him and in wild at heart fashion knocked his car off the cliff and killed him.
Right.
So that was kind of an ode to that. But as for the whole like Aaron and Annie thing, I mean, that was all my invention. I mean, I knew that obviously from the show, she said she had a boyfriend, didn't work out. There's a suicide attempt. And so I kept thinking about all those like picture perfect couples you knew in high school that didn't last a year into college.
Right.
And they were devastated for like, or at least one of them was devastated for a while. And then you would catch up like 4 years later and they'd be like rocking it in some band like downtown or something like that, you know? And I thought, all right, well, I need to get Annie to make the move to, being suicidal. So I thought we're going to have the boyfriend kind of diss her, just like drops her off of the house, dumps her off the house, leaves. We're gonna have the stepdad play that hit on her because that's from Mark Frost's book. And then I thought, her mom, who would later go on to be the food critic, M.T. Wentz.
Yes, M.T. Wentz,
who has no empathy whatsoever for people.
Certainly not her children.
And I thought, wouldn't it be great if she kind of blamed Annie for him leaving? And I thought
I've seen this happen.
I know. I thought that would be a really amazing moment to have the mom side with the stepdad.
Yep.
Because you never, even though Annie and Norma are stepsisters, and in the and then in the book it gets very kind of convoluted about it.
Yes.
But then I distilled it to how Norma talks to Annie about it in the hospital, where she talks about like when Dad died and that type of thing. But I thought, well, if the mom throws her out of the house, that's even worse, right? Because the mom's blaming her for being a tramp.
Right.
And then she calls her boyfriend to pick her up, and he's like, no, because you didn't have sex with me, so goodbye. And I thought, if all of those happened in the course of one night, that could take a starry-eyed girl who thinks that her boyfriend's going to propose to her tonight, all of a sudden go the other direction.
Oh, definitely could take her down into the depths.
And then,
especially when so religious.
But again, it is a flashback, but it's also her in the Black Lodge.
And the Black Lodge.
Right. And Maddie, said, the way I'm reading this, and I understood this instinctually, but I never verbalized it. And she was the one that kind of put it into words as we were driving there to the location. And she said, why is the Black Lodge making me relive this and to kill myself? And I said, well, it's a way of, showing us the flashback, but at the same time making her relive the worst night of her life. It's kind of a way of like playing on her fears, right?
That it'll never get better than this. Yeah.
Right. And she said, yeah. She goes, the way I see it too is the Black Lodge can't kill me. I'm too powerful, so it's going to make me kill myself.
That's great.
And I thought, yeah, I mean, I understood that like as a writer, but I had never thought about it in that particular way. You know what I mean? And so I was like, that completely makes sense. So in real life, and according to the story, she attempted suicide and then she goes to the nunnery, right? So I thought, wouldn't it be great?
The nunnery.
After she does that, and the knife drops.
Beautiful knife, by the way.
Yeah, and then it lands on the floor of the Black Lodge.
Yeah.
And having her crawl out and realize the drapes were now the red drapes, and then having the nun saying, get up, child. I thought, well, that's what happened in her life, but now she's doing the abstract version of this. And so at the end, at the end of the Black Lodge sequence, when the good Cooper runs in, when she's like transfixed by Caroline, and Cooper runs in and says, you need to get help. I'm here. And she goes, you're not, this is you, it kind of renews her whole purpose, because she's been thinking that Cooper's turned into this evil, horrible person. And now she realizes
She
Cooper,
realizes, right?
that Cooper, the good Cooper's in the lodge. And so what she's wanting to get to Laura to give her this message to talk to Major Briggs, because if she can talk to Major Briggs can, help her and that type of thing. But at that point in the story, she's so gone through the flashback and the Black Lodge and Good Cooper that when she runs out and gets to Laura, she can say nothing else but the Good Cooper is in the lodge. Right. And so it completely changed her message. And yet her changing her message also helped Laura continue on the path to being dead. Because if she had given her the correct message, maybe she would have been, because she would have talked to Major Briggs the night of, when she's at Bobby's house and talks, and Major Briggs is there reading the Bible with
right.
That.
That's
so
awesome.
So that was the whole thing. And yeah, it's I mean, and as a storyteller, I was like, this would be a great thing to do. I'd love to see this thing. And then you start to realize, wow, this is going to take a lot of work to pull this all off. I didn't think it was going to, honestly. I thought, well, we get some committed actors, we can do this. And that's basically what happened. But it took a long time to find that.
The committed actors and the magic,
right? Right, and to get everybody on board and everyone be like, yeah, this is going to be a really cool thing, because if they believe in it, then I believe in it. Do you know what I mean? But if I was surrounded by a bunch of people who didn't believe in it, oh, this is the drag,
So what was it like to play Gordon Cole?
Oh, good Lord. Well, I wanted an actor to do that. And
why? Because it's perfect that you did it.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted an actor to do it, and we couldn't find anybody. And and Maddie said, you should totally do it, because you can do the voice. And I say, yeah, but I don't look anything like David Lynch. And she goes, yeah, it doesn't matter. But the fact is that David Lynch played Gordon Cole, so you should play this.
Yes. Right? And you made it so I heard the voice first and then saw you. It was perfect. Like you're so smart with the way that you made the voices introduce us into the characters that we already knew, so that it was a way of sort of blending the two.
Well, it's like when Nico is Cooper, right, at the beginning.
Yes.
That whole introduction, I show you everything but his face.
And it's so smart of an introduction, so that you get acclimated to who is who in this new world. It's really well done.
Well, that was the intent, was to not show his face, so that by the time you do see him, you've accepted this is Agent Cooper.
Because Lynch is a sound guy. So
I thought, okay, and what's really funny about that scene as me as Gordon Cole is that sequence was done as a test, because I was a little nervous about doing it, and I was a little nervous about doing it with the lines, and so I was like, Nico, let's just try this. Let's just put it on its feet, and because we were originally we wanted to shoot it in like an office, and Cooper was going to come into the office, and I was going to talk to him. But we lost the office because of COVID, right? But thank God we did this test scene where I was just like, let's just run it, and just come in, and I'll be at the file cabinet, and we'll just talk, and we'll just run the lines. And so I didn't think I thought that scene was going to have to not even be in the film. And then when I saw it, I was like, well, it's good enough. We can put it in the film. But it's funny though, because a lot of people who have watched it, they're just like, it's not so much the Lynch voice, it's the fact that I knew where to stop at the commas and the periods, so that like it sounds enough.
The cadence,
right? The cadence. That that you can totally kind of feel it. And also, I needed that scene because I needed Cooper to get to the West Coast, because the West Coast is where he's going to meet Denise Bryson eventually, and also he needs to be on the West Coast because that's how he got to Twin Peaks so fast.
Right.
So and also
I want to ask. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I love the idea of Gordon, giving him like this Wyndham Earl note, because later on in the series he would come back and give him this note as well. And I thought it's a way of keeping the Wyndham threat going. It also allows you to get that extra moment with Caroline when Cooper's remembering. And I thought that's what we need, is we need, because like some people have said, yeah, but Queen of Hearts is not as mysterious as like Twin Peaks or like that. And I said, well, yeah, but it's not trying to be
Trying
that.
to be that, right?
It's more trying to tell this, this quad story or quad character story from like an emotional level of what we haven't really seen before.
Right.
You know.
So I wanted to ask, I thought that your music selections were really interesting.
All in the script. All in the script.
So why did you choose a version of Nessun Dorma, which is most famously done by Pavarotti, to be done by a woman?
Well, she's grown up now, but little Jackie was of Lancho. Is that her name?
Yeah.
She was like, what was she, like 9 or 10 when she did that?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds so epic that I don't know. That was the version that I liked, and so I just went with it. And I thought this cross cutting between, you'll get this now because you've seen these movies, but this cross cutting between Cooper holding Caroline and Annie about to slit her wrists and Wyndham Earle about to stab him and Nessun Dorma playing, I thought, this is my Coppola Godfather moment.
So, okay, you'll appreciate this. We decided to record this episode earlier today, and the moment we decided that, I'm like, well, I'm going to have to watch it now. So between then and now, what I've been doing is watching Queen of Hearts. So all of this feels really recent to me. And yeah, I totally saw that kind of Coppola moment with the opera, and like, this is very good.
But it's not, again, it's not just like with David Lynch. It's not ripping off Coppola. It's like I said, Godfather 2 was that story, that way of telling a story was very inspirational. And I thought that would be such an incredible thing, is like, this is an operatic moment. Let's lean into it.
Well, and also Dead Again, because, but yeah, I
exactly.
really liked it. And I really liked that I love that you chose that particular version of Nessun Dorma, because I don't think that many people get to hear it from somebody not Pavarotti. So the lyrics are also so perfect for the moment.
And I did cheat a little bit, because obviously the date of when she recorded that would not be, consistent with.
I didn't notice. I didn't care.
No, I know. I'm just saying there are times even Tarantino has made music choices because it's perfect and not because it came out the right time.
Right. Wonderful. Well, that's okay. Those are all my questions. All my formal questions.
All right. Well,
what was your favorite part of putting it together? What was the thing that you learned the most from?
Seeing it all come together and knowing that I wasn't crazy. that it was gonna work, because I was putting it all together during COVID while we were in lockdown. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually like, I knew it was going to work. I mean, story wise, the actors were good. But again, you don't know until you see it.
You don't know until it's all done, until you've got something that looks like the thing.
And let's be honest,
early stages, things look bad.
Let's be honest here. Making what I thought was going to be a 2 hour and 15-minute film ended up becoming a 4-hour film. I was just like, this thing, I mean, this has the potential of completely falling on its face to do but again, go big or go home.
Right.
It's like, might as well just, nobody will be able to see this and not say, well, they didn't try.
No, you really, really just went for it in a way with absolute strident competence. And I think that David Lynch would be proud of that.
And we had
obviously stayed true to what you had seen. And
we were doing, the effects were taking a while. And so I thought, well, if they're taking a while, then we could just start maybe releasing this in parts. And because it wasn't meant to be that, but we figured, much like season 3, it's like, let's keep the conversation going.
I liked that. It gave me a chance to kind of digest each piece and think about it and get really hyped for the next one,
Right. And Maddie at first was like a little unsure about like, well, but it's supposed to be one story and this, that. But I said, I said, this is where I'm thinking of stopping each part. And she goes, that's perfect. Do it. Because like I found the right moment of each episode to make you go
cut. Yeah. And to make it so that each one felt sort of self-contained and of itself. And yeah, that's a piece,
Also the fact that I was able to put it into 5 acts, because obviously as I know
as a
movies supposed to be 3 acts,
screenwriter.
but 5 acts is the playwright.
5 acts also works. Yeah, that's a playwright thing.
Right. And so I wanted to have it be a 5-act kind of thing. It wasn't meant to be, but then again, I thought, if we just make this whole film and then just drop it, people can watch it or not watch it, and then it's over. But if it's 5 acts and then drop the big one, then then people can kind of get into it individually. And anyway, it seemed to go over well. So
it's an amazing piece, and
and
it really elevates the bar and helps extend the conversation about Twin Peaks. I think it's great.
I think I've told the actors too. I said we're playing the long game here. People are going to watch it immediately because people have heard so much about it. But I said in 5 years, in 10 years, I think people are really going to be talking about it because nobody else has ever tried this. And it's I even if you Google it, you'll see websites and stuff that have talked about it and just say like this is something else. You know what I mean?
It's incredible.
So whether people like it or don't like it, it's like it's part of the conversation. As I'm not saying part of the conversation in terms of like canon, but but I've had people say to me, I cannot do a Twin Peaks rewatch anymore without incorporating this into it. So that's
because it's a nice little bridge, and it really does work very well between all of the pieces to bring it a little bit closer and tighter together, because that middle bit, that 25 years bit that we all waited, can feel quite sprawling between if you try to watch everything in order that it was shown. If you try to watch it in the order intended of like chronological order, it feels jarring and shocking. But if you have Queen of Hearts sitting there between the two, it actually visually matches as a kind of between land, and story wise it gives a lot more depth, especially to two women characters who are very important to the establishment of Dale Cooper. I mean, these are like the loves of his life. You know what I mean? These are, if you're talking about the character of Dale Cooper, if you love who he is, then surely we should get a bit more time than we got with Carolyn and Annie. And I love what you did with their characters.
The vlog lady on YouTube also mentioned that like she found it really interesting that we're seeing Dale Cooper from Annie's point of view, from Caroline's point of view, and Diane's point of view. 3 strong women, and how they see him. And even though Cooper is a big character in the film, it's his relationships with these women that inform us about his journey.
Yes. Yeah. And I like anything that takes people, and particularly women, and elevates them above just women and refrigerators, which I hate to say that Annie felt like that she was a character that was made just so that we could see Dale's trauma played out on her, but it could feel like that at times viewing season 2, and you have transcended her from that, and I appreciate that.
And how do you feel about her now?
I mean, I feel so much better about her as a character. When I think of Annie Blackburn, I think of Maddie in that role. I think of what you've given Annie: a backstory, a purpose, agency, power, all the things that I would hope that somebody who that would get.
I took what Harley Payton and Mark Frost and David Lynch, came up with, and I just kicked the can down the road a bit,
Well, I'm so thrilled to have her be a powerful woman and a interdimensional crime fighter, interdimensional being of light. I don't know. I'm just happy
I gotta tell you, people were
out.
really surprised. I couldn't believe this. They were surprised that like I can't believe that she didn't get together with Cooper at the end. And I was like, what movie were you watching? Because
why would she get together with Cooper at the end?
Because that's the way they think, I guess. But like, I'm like, where in the movie did it feel like this thing was building towards them getting back together?
I didn't feel that at all. I felt that the whole entire movie was kind of geared at her getting her power and getting a stride and getting a say and having agency and learning from the mistakes of others. I thought that it spoke to her growth as a human being. That I didn't think that grown up wise Annie would be like, yeah, Dale, let's get back together. She's gonna go live her best life, man.
Well, the fact that even at the end when she's walking to Laura's house, she's not walking like carefully down the sidewalk. She is owning the street.
She's like down, stride. She's got purpose. She walks with purpose,
and she's not nervous. She's not timid. I
It
mean,
reminds me very much of, Nadine when she's walking down the street with a golden shovel. It's that sort of same, like, I know exactly where I'm going and what I'm going to do, and I know that it's the right thing. Yeah,
right.
that was special.
And just knowing that you would be so happy if you can't really see it on film because it's so dark, but the dress she's wearing, the dress is actually modeled on tree branches and pine needles.
Oh,
And,
that's so cool.
so it's like she literally became one with the woods.
Oh, that's so awesome. I also love the detail of her flannel dress because there's a lot of like flannel play in the original Twin Peaks. I loved that a lot of her costumes kind of echoed all of, I mean, obviously the dress.
Which,
But
by the way, I have to say, the wonderful ladies who made the floral dress and the Miss Twin Peaks dress, they nailed it. They look fantastic.
perfect.
And yeah, and I just have to say that like I'm so relieved that the whole Annie Dean relationship completely works. So that by the end of the film, you're so happy for them.
Right, you're rooting for him because that makes more sense for Annie.
And Maddie was like, I remember it dawned on her. She said, wow, I can go and be with Laura and Cooper and do whatever needs to be done. And then I can just step back of whatever moment in time I need to and be right back with Norma, Dean, and Ed. Like I never even left. Yeah, because she is there's scene with Wyndham and Cooper where he's talking about chess and they're saying, well, the queen can do this and that and this.
Yep.
They're basically describing what Annie is going to become.
Oh yeah, I definitely picked up on the conversations about the queen and chess and the queen of hearts being very significant.
Well, not only that, but Cooper says, she's the queen is the most powerful. Like
right.
I'm completely letting you know where we're heading here.
Yeah, I appreciated that as somebody
and also
who appreciates all those hints in the story,
and the fact that like, because like people when they watch season 3, they're like, well, when did Gordon Cole come up with this plan with Cooper and Major Briggs, and because it didn't make any sense in terms of the original show, like when they would be able to do this. And then in my film, I have Annie just telling Cooper, Wyndham Earl, he's right over there.
Right.
So okay,
solving a problem.
So if we just completely get Wyndham Earl out of the storyline, then that frees up the next 5 or 6 episodes, and Cooper and Major Briggs and Gordon Cole can work on their plan.
Yeah. You actually sealed a lot of little like questions, and especially again around characters. I don't want to say like Caroline and Annie weren't well written in season 2. That's not what happened. I think they just
there is no character
ran out of time.
Caroline in season 2.
Right. There is no character of Caroline. There are beautiful images of her and a whisper of who she might be. I appreciate that you took those concepts and deep love of Twin Peaks and actually made them into fully realized women that are not playing into that dichotomy of either being a vixen or a virgin. You elevated that conversation for these two people in particular, and I appreciate that because it makes Annie so much more compelling and stronger as a character. She's a better character for this.
But I also think that like when it was getting difficult, like and going like should we cut one of the stories and just do one?
I'm glad you didn't.
No, because I think they have to feed off each other. They really do. I mean, if you could tell the Annie story, you could tell the Cooper story, but they get their power from each other. Like Godfather 2, they build.
That again, yeah, they build and they play off of each other and they inform the other. Yeah, well done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It makes me happy that you were such a fan of it, and I knew you wanted to talk to me about it. So.
Yeah, I loved it, and it really I admire the work that you did, and I guess actually my final question would be this: would you do it again?
Would I make this film again?
No. Would you make the next part?
You mean a sequel?
Yeah, sequel, prequel, whatever.
Well, I mean, I kind of would love to, but I don't think I could. At this point, I don't think I could get all the actors back together again. But just because everybody's just moved on with their lives.
Sure.
That type of thing.
And Maddie's got a new single. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only is today, we're recording this May 20th. Not only is today her birthday, but her latest single just dropped. So
amazing single. Get to hear
yeah,
her beautiful voice again. Yeah.
which she does the overture at this, and this was something like I didn't even plan for. We were doing ADR, and she goes, oh, I just want you to know that I recorded this song a while back, and I was thinking, if you like it, you can feel free to use it wherever. And I listened to it, and I said, well, obviously the music was already planned, so I don't know where I would put it, but I said this movie is probably going to be pretty long, so in true epic film nature, we could do like those old school overtures. And
I loved that, by the way. I loved the font. I was like, this person knows what they are doing. Look
oh,
at
with
this.
the double peaks, like from the TV
Yes,
guide.
with the double peaks from the TV guide. I was like, yeah, this is old school fan right here. This is a reference that, you could only get if you had TV guide open at the time. Like, it was great. And the, the lyrics and the vocal quality and everything really set up for everything that was about to happen. Yeah, you got some fabulously talented people in this.
Absolutely. It never, I don't think it ever could have been. I think when people say to me, oh my God, it took you forever to do this. It's like, yeah, but on the other hand, it was just because I was waiting for the right people to come into my life to make it. So,
and yeah, things will happen when they're right to happen.
Absolutely. All right. So let's wrap this up because I hear Mr. C having a hard time out there. Be sure to follow Jamie on Twitter. She's a regular staple on the channel now, and I'm sure you'll be back for many, many Twin Peaks discussions in the future.
Absolutely.
And appreciate you guys all watching. Make sure to follow us on Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Email us anytime at obnoxious@anonymous.hotmail.com. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will see you soon. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, and watch Queen of Hearts.
Yes.